Okay, slap that baby up there, Liz. Thanks. All right, here we go.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door.
Wait a minute. Did that just, hesitate?
Yep.
Dang it. Try this again.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 473.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello. You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 638 at the Hyatt Regency in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Today's show was recorded on the 19th of May in the second year of COVID, 2021.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Picture light and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about some aviation news. Then after that, we're going to cover your feedback. And then we'll probably talk about beer, some other stuff. Oh yeah, the plane tale entitled Mutiny. Get all settled in, seat backs in their upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on. Flight 473 is ready for pushback. Thank you, Radio Roger. He is an award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at number one all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins in
New York City!
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast where we cover the latest in aviation news and answer your great feedback. I'm Captain Jeff, a pilot at a major legacy airline based in Atlanta, Georgia. And joining me today from the Valley of the Sun, world traveler, airplane mechanic, Breitling cognoscenti, fitness hound, and international air freight captain. It's Miami Rick.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be back from home for a change. So, looking forward to another great show.
It will be, for sure. Oh, I'm trying to mute that, or fade it out. Here we go. Okay. And also joining us from his studio in... Wow. I'm just not used to doing this with one little tiny screen.
In hot.
We'll try that again. And also joining us from his studio in
Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire.
one of those three places. Professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, retired Airbus A330-340 captain for Virgin Atlantic Airlines. It's Captain Nick.
You waited for that, didn't you? You didn't want to speak over that.
No!
You mean man. Timed. Great to be back on the show. Lovely to see you two guys. Looking forward to do a good one on the anniversary of the delivery of the 5,000th F4 Phantom 2. Isn't that amazing? Ooh. What a great era.
Oh, I was celebrating that earlier today.
Well, yeah.
And, yeah.
Wow.
We'll talk about that later. How about?
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah.
Right now, let's get on with the news.
Stand by for news.
All right, let's start with the first item in our news notebook. It's FAA probes near miss of passenger jets at San Diego Airport. The incident occurred just after 10:30 p.m. on Thursday of last week and involved an inbound flight and a plane about to take off. And this is from NBC7 San Diego. NBC7 San Diego. What is it that the anchorman used to say? Huh? Stay classy, San Diego. The Federal Aviation Administration has opened an investigation into an apparent near miss at a San Diego International Airport. No, not at at the San Diego International Airport Thursday evening, agency officials confirmed to NBC7. An inbound SkyWest flight from Portland, Oregon was on final approach, preparing to land a little after 10:30 when the pilot was waved off by air traffic controllers because another aircraft, a Delta flight headed to Detroit, was still on the runway. Air traffic controllers at San Diego International Airport instructed the crew of SkyWest Flight 3446 to discontinue their approach to runway 27 Thursday evening because another aircraft was on the runway preparing for departure, an FAA representative emailed NBC7. The other aircraft, Delta Airlines 2249, departed safely, and the SkyWest aircraft landed later. The FAA is investigating. Flight log data, or data if you prefer, aircraft tracking website FlightAware.com shows the inbound SkyWest jet descended to 200 feet above sea level at the time of its first landing attempt. The plane ended up touching down 12 minutes later. According to Airbus's website, an A330-200 is a little more than 55 feet tall at the tip of its tail. A diagram on the FAA's website shows the eastern edge of the runway at San Diego International Airport is about 17 feet above sea level. So get your calculators out. I thought they were going to do a little bit more math here, but apparently not. Forget that. So, like, see, 55 plus 17, take that sum and subtract it from 200. I think that's what they're trying to get at here. It was close, I guess. It's not known how many passengers or crew were on either of the planes involved, but that's okay. Nobody was injured. Nobody was hurt. In fact, probably nobody even knew that it happened. On board those two airplanes. But let's see. SkyWest Airlines issued a statement Friday regarding the incident. Alaska Airlines Flight 3446 traveling from Portland to San Diego. Obviously, it was SkyWest operating for Alaska. Landed without incident at 10:55 last night. Air traffic control issued a go-around to give further separation between aircraft. That's a standard procedure. Our pilots are highly trained and skilled at responding to these type of situations. A Delta spokeswoman declined to comment on the matter because she didn't know what a go-around is. So,
a wave off.
A wave off.
It's a wave off.
Whatever.
It's,
I don't know.
Former
She's just
former
said,
naval
hey,
aviator, apparently.
Yeah.
So who's this from? San Diego? News 7, NBC 7 in San Diego? I have no comment. Do you? Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to know.
Go
ahead.
I think it's just a slow news day, apparently, huh? It's just.
Yeah. But it does sound like, why did it, okay. It sounded to me like the tower instructed the go-around. Did the SkyWest flight not know that there was an airplane still on the end of the runway? I'm kind of curious here. If this data is correct, why did they wait so long to go around?
So my question here is so that was the go around was the SkyWest jet instructed to go around as the Delta jet was on its takeoff run? That's one thing. The other thing is it wasn't.
I know the answer. No,
really, it wasn't. Okay.
No.
And was there low cloud?
No, not in San Diego. And it's interesting because as part of the before takeoff procedure, and this goes for just about every airline out there, you do two very important things. The first one is you turn your TCAS, your Traffic Collision Avoidance System, to TARA, which stands for Traffic Advisory Resolution Advisory, which is what that's going to do is on your navigation display or EHSI, whatever it is that you have installed on there. So basically, whatever you use for situational awareness, and where the airport is and all that, and it shows you where the runway is, your landing runway. You're going to have a target on there, telling you that that's an airplane on the runway. The other thing is, whenever you are cleared onto an active runway, you're always going to turn on you're going to have your red anti-collision light, but you're also going to, as soon as you cross into an active runway, you're going to turn on your white anti-collision light, your strobe light. And you don't need to be head on to see that one, because usually those are at the either the aft portion of the wings or the very back of the APU tail cone area. So you're going to see that. And so if low ceilings wasn't an issue, which I don't believe it would be an issue in San Diego, because I've flown into San Diego many times and I've never seen it socked in, then you would see that airplane on the runway. What I do personally when that is the case, when I see an airplane, when ATC has an airplane on the runway waiting for takeoff clearance as I'm coming in, I'll leave, and this is just personal technique, I'll leave the autopilot on until the airplane is cleared off and I'm clear to land, so that in case I have to fly a go-around, particularly at night at the end of a long day, I fly the go-around on autopilot. Because it's a lot easier than having having to fly that thing manually. Usually the level off altitude is relatively low, 3,000 feet, and so to prevent any kind of altitude bust. But then again, I mean, I don't know. I just that kind of sounds like a slow news day to me. I don't know.
Well, I did. Liz and I listened to the ATC audio yesterday. It wasn't Vast Aviation, but it was another video YouTube channel that had the incident audio on their channel, and it sounded pretty routine. The SkyWest was coming in; they were doing the RNAV. I think they were doing the RNAV Zulu to runway 27, and this is that approach here that I'm showing on the screen here. Let me zoom into it.
So what's minimums there?
Okay, I was just going to scroll down and show you that. 617 if they're doing the RMP, 600 feet above the ground. I don't believe that ceiling and visibility was an issue that night.
Nope.
And the Delta Jet, the A330, was on the runway, and apparently they were having some kind of a mechanical issue going on, and they were cleared on and cleared for takeoff, I believe, but they didn't start their takeoff roll right away as the tower was anticipating. And they finally said, after the SkyWest was directed to go around by tower, the Delta Jet said that they were having a mechanical issue and that they needed to, get off the runway and try to work out the problem. So, yeah, it was there the whole time. It was in position, and the SkyWest crew, I don't know if they didn't see them or what, but, anyway.
And here's a question for Nick, because I know that Airbuses do this. I guess as part of their takeoff procedure, they have a button under the ECAM there, right on the center pedestal. That's takeoff configuration test. I think you press a button there, and there's supposed to be some kind of, the system runs through all the configuration of the airplane. If there's anything that's not the way it should be, it lets you know. Or
that's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just
if you've misaligned something or haven't got the flaps where you have told the airplane it should be, then you'll get a config warning will come up. I think that's general with quite a lot of airplanes nowadays. I'm going to say yes, the passengers of the 330 did hear the Embraer, because they came like in go-around power within 128 feet of them. So I'm guessing they heard them, but whether they knew what was going on, I don't know. The wingtip strobes on the Airbus, they can be sort of close to the edges of the runway, so they might have got mingled up with the edge lighting. The aircraft itself, close to the threshold, is right in a bright area of landing lights, Barrett's, whatever the approach lighting system is there. So aircraft lights can get, mixed in with the general mess of lights on the threshold.
That is a very good point, yeah.
One of the things that we're taught to do is to confirm that the runway area is clear. You've got two sets of eyes looking out to make sure that the runway is clear. So,
yeah.
And I have to say, this is a bit of an old complaint of mine. In the States, you get clear to land a long way out. In the UK, you get clear to land when the runway is clear. So there's no way this would have happened in the UK, because they would not have given a clearance to land until that aircraft was off the runway.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah. But it's just a thing. It's just a thing we all noticed when we first go to the States and we go,
Right.
Christ, there's 3 airplanes ahead, and there's one guy taking off. I'm already clear to land. What's going on over here?
Yeah, the PRM approaches especially, they,
Oh, yeah.
You're like number 5 and you're clear to land, 20 miles out.
I've heard the justification for it. I've listened to opposing bases, and they say they'll be on the ball, and if there is something changes, they will send you around, as happened. I just thought this was a wee bit late.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, just a question. I'm not casting any judgment on the SkyWest crew for SA, situational awareness, but it just seems to me, maybe the whole time they could see that the Delta jet was still in position, and they were already maybe briefing the fact that they were probably going to have to go around out of this. But still, 200 feet above, I don't know. I guess.
Yeah, that does seem a bit low to me.
You're inside of a mile, so it's not like you're right over top of the thing. And
yeah,
and then again,
and it'll be quite obvious, a big airplane like that, if they're not already brakes released, starting their takeoff roll at that point, that they're going to still be on the runway by the time you touch down. So I don't know. Maybe they just weren't aware that the airplane was there. I don't know. Just strange to me. Just a question. I don't know.
Yep.
Good question.
I'm not being critical. Well, maybe I am. No aspersions being cast. Thank you, Liz. She is the voice of reason and the voice of my vocabulary. And it, just an aside, I've done a couple of interviews for other podcasts in recent weeks, and I should have had Liz all set up and on the interviews with me so that she could start telling me things in the ear that I'm supposed to say. Because when I was at a loss for words on some of these interviews, I had nobody to tell me what to say. And I just sounded like a blubbering idiot.
We all know Liz doesn't really exist. She's just a voice in your head.
That's okay. Yeah, it's a voice in my head that if she's real or not, it doesn't matter. What was the name of that movie that the Harvey? Harvey? No, I'm not thinking. It was a more
Harvey
modern
was
movie.
The Invisible Rabbit.
No, I'm
Beautiful
talking about
Mind?
there was a one. Yeah,
A Beautiful
I think, is that
Mind
it?
with Russell Crowe and the.
Oh,
He
yes,
kind of
that
fell
was
in
good.
love with the computer voice, right?
No. I'm thinking of another.
That's a different
No,
movie
I'm-
then. It's another movie I'm thinking of, and I can't think of what it is. Help me, people in the chat room. That's why you're there, to kind of give me the answers that I'm looking for. Hey, Ant Pruitt. He is a twit TV
He's
network
a
or
twit.
twit. No, he's not a twit. Well, he is, actually. He is a twit.
Yeah, that's what I.
Her, that's it.
And the twit.
The movie is Her. Thank you, Liz. That I was thinking of. He has a thing in his ear, and it's like a constant digital companion, and he's talking, and he actually falls in love with this digital companion. Anyway, wow, talking about a
Sounds
rabbit hole.
weird.
Sorry. It's an interesting movie.
That's
It's
the
really
rabbit
pretty
hole
good.
that Harvey lives in, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So where were we? What were we talking about?
Moving on. I
Okay.
think.
That's what Liz is telling me as well, in not so many nice words. Let's move on with item B. Report Vulcan, I guess that's the way they pronounce it, Vulcan, AN-26, Antonov 26 at Birmingham, not Birmingham, but Birmingham, England, on the 16th of July, 2020. Crew possibly followed non-existent glide slope indication twice. Not once.
What?
Twice. Yeah. Registration, AN-26 registration, URCQD, performing flight 161 from Ostrava, Czech Republic, to Birmingham, with 3 passengers and 6 crew. Not a lot of passengers. 3 passengers and 6 crew. Okay, weird. Was on a localizer DME approach to Birmingham's runway 33 when the aircraft did not descend according to the approach profile, but remained at the initial altitude. When the aircraft was about 600 feet above the profile, tower instructed a go-around in line with the missed approach procedure. The aircraft positioned for another localizer DME approach to runway 33 and descended. However, they descended about 600 feet below the profile this time. Whoops. It's going to average it out.
I shouldn't
There you go.
laugh.
I call it 300.
Tower issued a terrain alert and again instructed a go-around. The aircraft subsequently positioned for an ILS approach to runway 15.
This
and
guy
landed
needs a
safely.
glide path.
Details, huh?
Well, so interestingly, the captain here, 44 years old, has an ATPL, 2,512 hours total, 624 hours on type, was undergoing a line check by a senior manager within the company at the time
Oh, I
of this
wonder
flight.
if he passed.
I'm
I
not
wonder.
thinking
I
he
wonder.
did.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised that the line check airman let him proceed as far as he did. Maybe this guy didn't know what was going on either.
Yeah.
You never know.
Well, if he's going to learn, he's going to learn the hard way.
Yeah, exactly. It's only 3 passengers, so, you take your chances when you fly with this company. Let's see. ATC provided further radar vectors to establish the aircraft on the localizer the second time around, and they reminded the pilots that there was no glide slope available. So that was between the first and second attempt at runway 33 before they finally went around to 15. It was like they could tell that maybe they didn't understand the fact that there is no glide slope, or you're not supposed to use a glide slope if you see one there. And, let's see what else here. That's about it. They apparently this guy didn't do well on this check ride, I'm thinking.
So I wonder if everyone understands what a localizer DME approach is.
Probably not, but maybe you could tell them, Nick.
Oh, well, okay.
Or Rick.
So the localizer part of it is the same as an ILS, and that will give you an indication whether you're left or right of the ideal approach path. So basically, you're on the center line of the runway. And because you don't have a glide path, you are now using the distance measuring equipment. So you get a readout in miles from the ILS aerials. You're going to get that on your screen. And you look at a chart with your approach plate on, and it will tell you what height you need to be at what distance from the airfield. So there'll be a start point for your descent, and you usually start going down just a little bit before it. So the inertia of the airplane takes you beautifully onto the descent path, and you set up what you think will be the ideal descent rate. Or if you're in an Airbus, you just select 3 degrees nose down on the flight path angle.
We have that in Boeings too. I used to do that on the 777 all the time.
Copied Airbus now. Okay, fair enough. And so, joking, I knew that. So ideally, every mile, the other pilot will tell you what height you're supposed to be and whether you're above and below the ideal glide path. And you just make corrections to ensure that you hit the next height at the right height. And just, measure your progress on the way down. So there's no needle to follow. You're just doing a sort of a manual comparing your height with your range from the ILS and judging your descent path from that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because newer airplanes actually, well, probably not the Antonov 26, but I'm talking newer type airplanes that are equipped with flight management systems. They will have the glide path coded into the procedure itself, and it'll tell you the point at which you're supposed to capture that glide path that is in the flight management system, and it'll tell you how many degrees that glide path is, and 9 times out of 10 is 3 degrees, which is usually what a normal glide slope is, and you will basically fly your published altitude until that very point, and then as long as you have the aircraft in vertical path mode, it'll capture that path and bring you down that computer generated path down to minimums, which are a little bit higher than your published ILS minimums. Category 1 ILS minimums are usually about 200 feet. When you have a computer-generated glide path, like a procedure, like Nick just mentioned, the localizer DME procedure only, where you're only using the localizer, the only ground-based nav aid you're using for navigation is the localizer. You need to have need to be able to see the runway a little earlier and establish that visual contact with your landing environment prior to landing. Another interesting thing about the glide slope here is, and the reason why, an accident came to mind here. Remember that 7-4 that went down in what was it?
Guam?
One of the stands. It was a 400. It happened not too long ago, actually.
Oh.
Maybe about a year or two ago. And it captured a false glide slope.
Yep.
And it's important that whenever you're flying an instrument landing system procedure, an ILS, you fly the published altitude prior to intercepting that glide slope, because the glide slope signal itself is a very funny thing. So you have your actual glide slope of 3 degrees, and you have false glide slopes. You have and the way the glide slope works is basically you have an antenna that emits two signals, one at 90 hertz, one at 150 hertz, and where those two lobes intersect, that's called a null zone, right? So basically, what the instrument on the aircraft is looking for is that null zone, where the 90 hertz and 150 hertz signal kind of nullify each other. It's called a null zone, right? So that the aircraft's going to interpret that as being a 3-degree glide. But there are null zones at 9 degrees and at 15 degrees. And so if you fly, if you remain high on your intercept altitude and intercept a null zone at 9 degrees or 15 degrees, the aircraft, your instrument is going to show you on glide slope, but your rate of descent is going to be considerably higher than it otherwise would be where you fly in a 3-degree glide. And the way you can kind of make sure that you're on the correct glide is you take your ground speed and multiply it times 5, and that should give you about what a 3-degree glide sync rate should be. So if you're flying, at 100 knots, to intercept a 3-degree glide should give you about a 500 foot a minute descent based on that ground speed. But the moral of the story here is always intercept the glide slope at the published altitude to prevent intercepting false glide slopes. And that's what I'm getting at here.
Awesome. Hey, so while you and Nick were so eloquently explaining localizer DME procedures and such, I looked up the actual approach that they were flying in Birmingham, and here it is. It's the ILS DME or localizer DME runway 33.
Oh, there. I can just about make out the height for ranges there in that bar in the middle, in that series of boxes.
Yep, there it is.
There you go. 5 miles, 1970 feet. 4 miles, 1660 feet. Yep, and that's the height you're comparing on the way down and deciding whether you're
and it is
high
a
and
3-degree. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a 3-degree glide, yep.
And the break-off for a localizer approach is in the box to the right-ish.
Yep.
Localizer glide slope, about 740 feet.
740 feet, that's correct.
Yep.
Yeah, so it gives you plenty of time to set up a visual approach once you're out of the cloud.
Yep.
Yeah,
Although that is only
over a mile and a half.
412 feet above the runway.
But
Yes.
I mean, but you're still over. You're a little outside a mile, which is plenty of time to adjust. And
Yep.
and ideally, and this is I'm saying usually the way this works is your whatever visual glide path indicator system is usually it should coincide with the electronic glide path, or you breaking out at minimums to see the runway environment. And I'm saying usually because I've flown many times in airports where it says glide path does not coincide with either the precision approach path indicator or the visual approach slope indicator, and it'll show you either being high or low, even though you are on the electronic glide path. And so that takes a little bit of, you have to be prepared for that. But they usually coincide. Even if they don't, they tell you on the chart.
Sweet.
So
All right.
see the AAIB rated it a serious occurrence, serious incident. So
They did.
They're very worried about this bloke.
They are.
They
And
don't do that lightly.
nope. So
He puts it down to not flying them very often, and they'd changed the instrumentation on his airplane. So there you go.
okay. Sure. Sounds like a good excuse to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the weather. I highlighted it. You know, the 4,000-foot ceiling, 2,600-foot ceiling with cumulonimbus, temporary rain, thunder showers. So, you know, it wasn't ideal weather, but it wasn't, by far, it was anything super low visibility or low ceiling kind of an approach. And obviously it couldn't have been because it was a localizer only. I guess, you know, it's possible for you to fly kind of skosh weather approaches using a non-precision like the localizer DME, but not very common.
Well, we've been doing it for decades.
Yep. Yeah, and you should know how to do it, regardless of where they put the instrumentation on your airplane, right? You should. He's the commander. He's supposed to know what's going on. So, kind of a thumbs down from all of us here on that. Those two approaches. All right, continuing on, let's talk about this one here. Moldova, an A321 at Moscow's Domodedovo with 8 crew. And hang on a second, I have the actual Russian person who is a listener to our show, Controller Vlad, recorded this for us. So this is like from, oh wait, do I not have that one? Crap. Yeah, it'll be, right now you're listening to it. Wasn't that nice? Thank you, Controller Vlad. I have this one.
Новосибирск.
Oh, that's not him.
Внуково,
That's him.
Шереметьево.
Yeah, but neither of those airports. It was the other one. What was it again, Rick?
Domodédovo. I mean, let me see
Okay.
here. Domodédovo.
Okay, sure. With 8 crew and no passengers, was on a final approach to that airport's runway 14 right. When the crew initiated a go-around from low height, below 300 feet AGL, the aircraft positioned for another approach to runway 14 right and landed about 20 minutes later. Post-flight inspection revealed damage to the tail of the aircraft, which was unable to depart for the return flight. The occurrence aircraft is still on the ground about 44 hours after landing. Of course, this was a few days back. This was out on, the 18th of May. So I don't know if they've gotten the thing fixed or not. Airport sources report the aircraft was not able to land on the first approach due to strong winds. They performed another approach, touched down hard, and struck its tail onto the runway surface. Rosaviatsia reported, here, let me try this one.
Росавиация.
Thank you. Reported the tail of the aircraft contacted a runway threshold lamp of runway 14 right on the second approach at 12:40 Zulu time. A subsequent inspection revealed damage to the tail section of the aircraft in the form of a dent, scoring, and abrasions. As one of the followers of this website, this is, by the way, from the Aviation Herald, pointed out, the aircraft, then tail number Golf Juliet Sierra Juliet X-Ray, was flying for My Travel Airways, had suffered yet another tail strike at East Midlands on the 2nd of March in 2002. Not sure what that's, something that is important, but they put that. Plane spotters.
They
like
keep
that
doing
stuff,
it. Eventually, the tail falls off. So I guess
will fall off completely.
it has
You're
some
right.
bearing.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. So yeah, if you happen to be with the airline that's flying it now, you might want to maybe get another airplane because there's a chance that
and like all joking aside, that is a very serious one of the worst places you can have a ground contact with is the tail, because it's structurally the tail, right inside of that you have the aft pressure bulkhead, and there's been many accidents where aircraft have had tail strikes and the bulkhead is blown out, and one of them, one that comes to mind here is Japan Airlines 123.
Oh yeah.
And
that was a nasty.
Yeah. So whenever you even suspect that you had a tail strike on takeoff, you never make it past 10,000 feet. You don't pressurize the airplane, you come right back, because you don't know what how the bulkhead is holding up structurally, and whether it'll be able to take the pressurization. 8.6 pounds per square inch is a lot of pressure to keep in there. If that's not structurally sound, then you could be in for a very, very rough ride.
So the AAIB had issued a final report on this, and I don't really. I'm going to read it, and maybe one of you or both of you can help me understand this. I don't really get what they're trying to tell me here. The root cause of the accident was the co-pilot's desire and perhaps need to practice an instrument approach technique shortly before his ability to perform it satisfactorily was assessed in the simulator.
So how's he checked out going on the line?
I don't know. He had not intended to fly the.
He just knew he had a simulator coming up, and he was trying to practice some approaches.
Okay. All right. He had not intended to fly the ILS approach without the benefit of the flight director, but once he had allowed the aircraft to fly through the glide path at relatively close range to touchdown, about 5 nautical miles, if he wished to retain the use of the flight director, he had little choice other than to discard that approach and attempt another.
What?
Thus, the earlier oversight of omitting to arm the approach mode of the flight director subsequently robbed him of its value in reducing workload, and he never succeeded in regaining a properly stabilized approach. The direct cause of the accident was the decision to continue the approach when it was not properly stabilized. The co-pilot's call regarding low airspeed at 70 feet AGL was the flight crew's final chance to extricate themselves from the deteriorating situation by performing a go-around. Now, I don't know about you, but this does not sound like the Air Accidents Investigation Branch of England or the United Kingdom.
I don't think it is. Well, it wouldn't
because
be if it's.
It didn't make the English was terrible. I don't understand what they're trying to tell me.
No, I don't think it is the British AIB. Why would they be out there anyway? It's not a British aircraft. It's happened in Russia.
Yeah,
I don't understand. I also don't understand. Now, I'm not an A321 operator. Wasn't an A321 operator, but the selection for the flight director is one button. Boom, boom. Turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. You can do it all day. It doesn't stop you doing an approach. And in the aircraft I flew, it didn't disarm the approach either. So I don't understand why he couldn't just select the flight director, or why he wasn't capable of flying a raw data approach without the flight director. You know, pilots have been doing that ever since. You know,
I remember though.
Wilbur didn't.
Yeah, I remember that when I would jump seat on 320s and 319s and 18s between when I flew in South America between the city down to the coast and up to Quito. The pilots would fly the ILS glide slope localizer down a certain altitude, and then once they had everything in sight and everything was fine, they would switch modes from that to track flight path angle. And just continue going down
and usually deselect the flight directors at that point, because the flight director for the flight path angle, which we nicknamed the bird, is hard to fly. It's laggy, and it's not a simple thing to fly, and it's nice just to get it out of the way. And the only reason we would select the flight path angle on a visual approach is because it gives you a lot more information. For visually flying the aircraft. It gives you your true angle of descent, and it gives you your drift as well. So it gives you more information. And so it was a generally accepted technique when you're visual to select flight path angle. You've also got all the other attitude and information you'd normally have, but it's still there. It's just kind of behind the bird. You can still refer to either. So.
And my other question here is, how is it that you let your airspeed get low if you have ground speed mini going for you, unless he wasn't flying with the autothrust engaged?
He might not have been, but ground speed mini works whether the autothrust is engaged or not. It's still it's a magenta triangle, a little speed bug. And you just maintain that speed bug. You've got to use manual throttles to maintain it, but ground speed mini is still fed into the system. So So
just slow scan, perhaps.
Yeah, it's very easy to. I think sometimes when you're flying an airliner and you're concentrating on that landing point, to let your speed fall out of your scan a bit, particularly if you're used to using auto throttle a lot, auto thrust a lot. And it's just one of those techniques you have to remind yourself to do, to scan the speed regularly, because it's just, a little harder. It's not there on a head-up display, sadly.
Exactly. And the interesting thing here is that the very late stages of the final approach. You really are controlling your speed with your pitch and your sync rate with your power. It's just kind of you get, at least that's my the way I kind of feel. When you're inside of maybe 300 feet perhaps. And I'm saying this because going into Maui the other day. And flying into the hit a little bit of turbulence coming down, and then we hit a little bit of a wake from the jet that took off before us. It was a 777. You really have no time to go down and scan your instruments when you're inside of 300 feet. I think, especially when the wind's blowing the way it was blowing, and all you really can do is try to hold your attitude as best you can, and you kind of feel what the airplane's doing sync wise, and kind of and correct that way. Because
absolutely, yeah, I agree. There is a line in there, Jeff, which I'm worried about. He never succeeded in regaining a properly stabilized approach. If he didn't have a stabilized approach, what was he doing continuing with the attempt to land? Precisely. Why wasn't he going around?
Just hoping for the best, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a technique. It's not a good one.
No,
yeah.
Check out that wind, though. 250 at 3 meters per second. That's interesting.
Yeah, lots of wind, huh?
6 knots.
6
knots for runway 14.
Yes.
So,
yes, a real tough day. So I wonder how he got on in his simulator.
Oh.
I'm thinking probably like the other fellow that had the check.
They're probably training together at this point.
Yes, probably. Yeah. Yes, they're now a constituted crew.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that's no problem in the future because item D, aircraft to become voice controlled in the future. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Honeywell Aerospace engineers and scientists are developing revolutionary cockpit technologies that will enable pilots to fly their planes using voice commands. It's the most recent attempt to eliminate pilots actually, by rising cockpit automation. The theory is that pilots can waste less time on repetitive and time-consuming activities like weather analysis by giving basic commands like tuning to a radio frequency or changing to a heading. Here's a little example here. Quote, "Tell me the weather in Charlotte and tell me the critical weather en route," is one command that could be given to ease a pilot's workload, according to Vipul Gupta, Vice President and General Manager of Honeywell Aerospace Avionics.
And the kit will come back and say, the weather in Chattanooga is...
Exactly. And I'm sorry, I don't have anything for that.
Yes, I
Perhaps you'd like
that.
Yes. I would take an umbrella today in Charlotte.
No, it's like calling Charlotte. Call Charlotte. It's like, no, don't call Charlotte.
Excellent.
No. This is a bad idea. Just let me tell you, this is not a good idea.
Seriously, people, keep it simple.
not.
Oh my goodness.
Please don't. We're button pushers, and when you push a button and see a number coming up on a dial or a screen, you know exactly what you're going to get. So please don't do this, because there are people talking, girls coming in, giving you coffee, etc. It's just too easily confused.
It is. Yeah,
yes,
I agree with you.
The eventual goal is to bring in that natural language processing context understanding. Wow. And then process it, and then provide the value to the cockpit. However, unlike Siri or Alexa, the aircraft's response must be immediate. When traveling in difficult environments, pilots can't afford to wait minutes for the machine to learn, comprehend, and conduct the order. Yeah, duh. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a pipe dream, and I don't think that's...
And I don't see how it saves time. I really don't. Because if you're adept at typing out the weather... You can probably do it as quick as you can say.
And
it.
you know what, Nick? Not only that, and a lot of these airports that have digital ADAs, there is a mode in your ACARs where you can have it send you a new ADAS every time a report comes out. It's called auto update.
Yep.
It'll
Absolutely.
It'll just tell you,
Why
new
would you
ADAS, here it
bother?
is.
Yep.
Instead of having to call Charlotte for it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying thumbs down
convinced.
on this one.
Yep. Another thumbs
All right. Another thumbs down. It's a thumbs down show right there. All right. Let's move on with this one then. This is from Cranky Flyer. United tries to end the blame game by retiring delay codes. Let's see. United is working towards something will be unimaginable. I did say that right. To just about every frontline airline employee. It is planning on eliminating internal delay codes, those obnoxious things that help the airline decide whose fault it is that a flight's delayed. I know this sounds very inside baseball. Sorry to even bring up the baseball word. Dodger fans, since your team has forgotten to play. Oh, that's some inside baseball right there. So forget that. I'm going to move down to this. There are really two kinds of delay codes in airline land. The first is the external code, which the Department of Transportation reports out in its monthly consumer report. It looks something like, well, anyway, like the typical information on airline flight delays that we are all privy to, that kind of rank the airlines for various months and, who's on top for the best on-time rating. And if your flight's delayed or canceled, then there are certain codes that try to keep everybody on the same piece of paper kind of thing, same page. But a lot of airlines, including Acme, have internal delay codes. And as they say at the beginning of this, that airlines, I guess the whole point of that is to kind of get get good data on what is happening with the airline. Why is this flight always, or at least 60% of the time delayed for 15 or 20 minutes? And let's see why. Is it loading baggage? Is it connecting passengers? Is it the pilots just too lazy to show up on time? What is it?
That's the one.
That's probably the one. Yeah. And so they use these metrics to kind of help fine tune things. But the problem is that especially at an airline that is highly unionized, so every employee group has union representation, and of course they don't want to be blamed for this stuff. They're constantly battling each other instead of working together as a team to try to. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. Let's just get this thing going. Let's fix whatever it is that we need to fix and get this thing going. So they're experimenting now at United with removing these delay codes, internal delay codes, to see if maybe people can play better together. I don't know. I'm kind of skeptical that this is going to help at all. But yeah, so that's what's going on here. What do you think of this? Do you have those internal delay codes at Acme Cargo? Acme,
we do.
What do we call you?
Okay. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's you are responsible for a timely operation. Every department is, and at the end of the day, you have to answer to whoever the customer is, and there's really no way of curving the line either one way or the other if you don't know where the problem is. And so I believe that these delay codes are necessary, really. You need to know where to trim the fat. Just at least from in my experience, for you to really be late, you have to be really, really late, because there's a lot of padding that goes into these scheduled departure and scheduled arrival times, and even the flight time itself. There's a lot of padding in there as well, so as to not bring the timeliness of the aircraft statistically way down. But again, I'm with you on this one, Jeff. I don't see how deleting this would or getting rid of these would have any positive impact on the operation at all.
Yeah,
if it'd be detrimental, if anything.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess we're going to see.
You've got to know where the bottlenecks are.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you can't fix them. And the only way to find out is to see what regularly causes delays. And if it's the same thing all the time, then you've got to allocate manpower. You've got to streamline the system. And if you don't know where the system's breaking down, how are you going to do that?
Right.
I agree.
All right. Thumbs up then on us.
Yes.
Thumbs down on. Wait a minute. No, I guess it's kind of a thumbs down again, right? On the
yeah.
on the getting rid of delay codes. Okay. It's kind of a thumbs down day, I guess. Let's try to get it back to a thumbs up operation, and let's do this. I'm scrambling to try to find my sorry, my little sound effect. Come on, where are you? Oh, there we go. It's time to get to know us. It's that segment of the show where we talk about what's been happening with all of us in between shows. And, you know, it hasn't been a lot of time, Rick. You and I.
No.
It was just a couple of days ago when we were recording part 2 of episode 472. And anyway, regardless, what has been happening with you since that?
Well, after we finished that recording, I went downstairs, went to the gym for a little bit, and then went out and got some sushi. And then I had to go to bed relatively early, or tried to at least, because I had to fly that evening. I departed back for the mainland at midnight local time in Hawaii, which is 3 a.m. I guess Pacific time, 6 a.m. East Coast, for a it was about a 5-hour flight, which it was good though, because it was a nice, stiff 80 knot tailwind across, which was nice. So 0.81 Mach and 80 knot tailwind, just under 5 hours, which is great. Got to Riverside, which is it's as we said, as we were talking about last time, it's a combined Air Force base, and they have a civilian ramp there, and then took the transfer van from there to Ontario to the airport for my flight back here to Phoenix. And got home and just been kind of, taking care of stuff here around the house, because it's funny because I joke around saying that my days off really are when I go to work, and when I come home it's really when I go to work here, because it's a lot of stuff that happens when I'm not here that I need to take care of. So here I am.
Right. Excellent. Welcome home. And
Yes,
get
sir.
to work. What are you doing
really.
sitting in front of that stupid microphone?
Oh, man.
I know. Oh, do you have a hidden microphone somewhere? Have you been hearing our conversation? Yeah, no. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I'm guessing right.
Okay. Well, we'll try to keep this thing rolling so you can get back to work. Nick, how about yourself? What have you been up to, sir?
Well, I've been trying to clear the decks. I completed a photo shoot, managed to get all the pictures published in a couple of days. Got rid of all my current bowls matches, managing to stay in everything I'm playing at the moment. And all this really is aimed around having a nice week off next week. So Friday, heading off down to the southwest to Cornwall, to a little cottage we have rented down there. We're going to spend a lovely quiet week by the seaside with the dogs, and eat Cornish pasties and drink Cornish beer, and just wind down a little bit. So that's what this week has really been aimed at. And
Cornish beer, is that beer made out of corn? Is that
Well, that's Budweiser, I think.
yeah, God. No, I'll be drinking
a lot of corn
Proper
in
Job or Tribute or something like that. So,
Very nice, very nice.
Ooh, I wouldn't mind a proper job.
Yes, I bet you wouldn't. No, it's very nice beer. All doing well there. I obviously won't be on next week's show, not just because I'm unlikely to have decent internet down there, but Jilly has decreed that we have a week away. I mean, we stop doing what we normally do and enjoy ourselves and relax. So you won't see me. Plain Tale next week is a rerun of one that I've tidied up a bit, and it is actually one of my very favourite Plain Tales. You haven't heard it for quite a while now, but look forward to that. That's really it. Take my camera down there, of course, because we often meet up with a lot of that's the breeder of one of our dogs lives. So we often meet up with a whole bunch of their friends and their Wieslas and go for a big mass walk on a beach somewhere. And it's always fun to take pictures. It's always good for a laugh. So that'll be nice.
Nice.
Very nice. Very nice.
Well, I can't wait to hear how that all goes.
I won't tell you. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'll have to talk to Julie then. All right. Let's see. My turn. I had a meetup with Stephen Ivy. I kind of mentioned that on the last episode, that I was going to meet with Mr. Ivy. And we did that, and we had some audio. And I haven't actually listened to the whole thing. I just, like literally minutes before we started today's show, was able to put it in the sound playing app that I use. And yeah, so it's uncensored. Hopefully I didn't say anything bad. So here, let's find out together how this meetup went with Stephen Ivy. Sing it, Stephen! Yeah! Stephen Ivy's here with me, and you can hear him singing in the background. Wait, let's listen. Yeah, you know, his voice is quite a bit higher than I thought it would be. But anyway, so Stephen Ivy, you've heard his name many times. You'll remember that Stephen and I took that great adventure last summer. Was it last summer? Yeah, June of last year? July? Okay, July of last year. So not quite a year ago. I had a blast. Got to see a bunch of amazing national parks and a train in Durango, Colorado. That was a lot of fun. Anyway, I'm sure you can find. Maybe I'll try to put a link. Don't plan on it. Don't count on it. But I'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes of some of these. Our great adventure. What do we call it?
We would never get over the name, but we gave up.
Yeah. Anyway, we had fun. So, Stephen, how you doing, man?
I've been doing good, Jeff. Been busy. I moved back from California back in March. My job at Acme Defense went fully remote, so I was able to come back home. And then I've been busy redoing a house. Been taking some time off from flying, and then I've also somehow managed to find myself getting married at the end of this year.
What?
Yeah, that wasn't planned. Wasn't planned at all, and there's actually a lot more planning that goes into a wedding than what I've thought. So I've been
Really? No kidding.
Yeah, it's like it's just some great event or something. Like you got to get people food, alcohol, and everything. It's a lot, but yeah, that's what I've been up to. But yeah, looking to start flying again next month, and I'm based in Houston now. So yeah.
So what I got from that is he's not doing anything, just sitting around watching Netflix or something. I don't know. Yeah, so that's great, amazing news that you're going to tie the proverbial knot in December.
December. Yeah.
Oh man, can't wait. That's cool.
Yeah, it should be great if everything goes according to plan. Hopefully.
Oh, and it will. Everything always goes according to plan.
Is there like a QRH procedure for things that happen at weddings? Because I might need that list, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, everything will go well. It'll be perfect, and you're going to have a great time. So that's exciting. And this meal we're having here is at the. Did we ever figure out exactly how to pronounce this?
Is it Superca or? Yeah.
Superica?
Superica, maybe?
It's like America? Like Super America?
Yeah,
I don't know. Is that what it means? Superica? Superica? We're not sure. But anyway, it's a Tex-Mex place here, and they have several locations. We're at the location at the Braves ballpark, Truist Field in Cobb County, and they call this area the Battery. Not sure why, but it's the Battery. And it's got all kinds of, it's crazy. Look, it's crowded. We had to be on a wait list, and Looks like everything is back to normal. The pandemic is not here right now.
And it's an open container policy. You can walk around with alcohol outside here.
What? Oh, that's great. All right. Picked a bad day to give up alcohol, didn't I? Okay. Well, anyway, we just wanted to say hi and kind of fill you in on Stephen's great news. And that's it from us. We're signing out. Back to you in the studio, crew.
See y'all.
I remember now. I had a meetup
It's
with
all
Stephen
coming
Ivey
back
in a
to you.
Mexican restaurant.
Very nice.
It was really good food. Really good food.
Steve has a
as you can see-
fantastic voice, by the way. Great singing.
He
voice.
does.
It's,
Yeah,
really
great.
good. I'm
great
very
pipes.
impressed.
Oh, you mean the singing at the beginning? Yeah, really, much higher than you'd think it would be. Very. Yeah. And you can see that the chips and salsa there in the photo that I had on there. Let's see. I'll go back to that again. There we go. In the restaurant there, looks like somebody kind of overshot the parking place behind us there. It was a close call, but the vehicle kind of crashed through the wall right there. Yeah. Anyway, so great to see you, Stephen, and we'll be hearing a lot more from him, I'm sure, in the upcoming months as they get closer and closer to that magic day of their nuptials. So that was a lot of fun meeting up with Stephen.
Excellent.
And let's see, what else was I going to talk about? It was going to be this. This was sent in by Robert Thompson, a friend up, just lives south of the Big Chicken up there in Mayetta. Aviation history will blast out of the museum and into the skies as Texas Raiders, a fully restored B-17 Flying Fortress, thunders into Cobb County International Airport May 24th through May 27th. Of the 12,731 B-17s built in the U.S., only 5 are still flying, including Texas Raiders. The commemorative Air Force will visit our airport with several World War II aircraft, including a B-17, of course, we just talked about that, a P-51 fighter, Mustang, a Dauntless dive bomber, a T-6 Texan trainer, and a five-passenger Navy transport called Little Raider. And details, if you want them, will be in a link that we'll post on or in the show notes for this show. So check it out if you happen to be in the North Georgia area and you want to see this show. All right. Thank you, Robert, for informing our group. And now let's go over here and play
It's a
this.
fine bunch of airplanes to go and watch. That'd be great.
Yeah. And here we go. It's time for the Coffee Fund.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea.
Too bad Stephen Ivey's not.
I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
That's him. I hear him. Thank you, Stephen. It's the Coffee Fund. That's actually Jeff Smith, the good voice that you're hearing in the background, singing the Java Jive, which is, and the reason why we're doing that is because we're talking about the Coffee Fund, your way to support the show financially. And since the last episode, well, we have a couple of different ways to do it. We have one called the Coffee Fund Classic Method, basically a PayPal donation page, and we have Jenny Parkinson in Rome, Chris Randall, and David Lieb, all three recurring donators via the Coffee Fund Classic method. And since the last show, we don't have any new patrons via Patreon, but we had a couple new ones last week, so that's just fine. So if you want to become a patron of the show, head over to patreon.com/Airline Pilot Guy. Or if you forget that, you can just go to our awesome website, airlinepilotguy.com, and click on the coffee page, and you can find all the information necessary to become part of our Coffee Fund Cadre or Coffee Bar Club.
Captain, incoming message.
All right. Do we need to take a break, anyone?
Yeah, I'm going to go get another beer.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
All right. So you notice what I'm doing there, Nick, with the... I actually took my ATEM Mini with me on my trip, and using my iPad to do this stuff. You're muted, sir.
Thank you. I was going,
yes.
Very good. Well done.
That's why you were seeing the, that was actually from my Jeppesen Flight Deck Pro app, so it's kind of handy to have. Another cool thing, I was showing Liz this the other day. If I use Keynote, let's see, Keynote. If I have, if I've prepped this properly before doing the show, I can do something like this. Show. Oh, darn it! There we go. I want to highlight something on this. I can do it like this.
Very
like a little
good.
telestrator
Like
kind of thing. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's a bit like, yeah. Oh, yeah. A bit like, what is it that I use? Death by Slides, the Microsoft one.
PowerPoint, yes.
Yeah.
Keynote's Apple's version of PowerPoint, I guess.
Yeah, I have used Keynote on my iPad. It seems to work well.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Ooh, I
handy,
just saw this one. Oh, look at this one here. That, wait. Remember that?
What a fine pair of gentlemen.
Yeah, that was back in, was that 2018, I think. The second time. And we were staying at Nigel's place, and then we,
That's right.
this was the week before the Farnborough International Air Show. We were staying at Nigel's palatial country estate.
And he really
place.
does have a palatial country
Yeah,
estate.
it's very, very, it's a really nice place. And he was such a hospitable host, and we stayed there for, 2 or 3 days, I think, Nick?
Yeah, went off and saw the birthplace of, in Stratford-on-Avon of I was going to say Churchill. My
Shakespeare.
brain is turning to mush.
Yeah, Shakespeare.
Yes,
I remember this one. Hey, we make a good team. Anyway,
that works well.
And that, what was it? The Royal Tattoo going on?
The International
Air Show.
Royal International Air Tattoo.
Yeah, we were up there. That's Nigel lives much closer to that place than Nick does, so we decided to head on up that way. Oh,
Yeah,
Neil
I
is
love
asking
these.
a question. Now things are picking up. Will you be doing the crew logs again? They were always good fun. I need to do that. I keep saying to myself, I really need to do the crew log thing. Yes, Neil, just keep bugging us and say, hey, where are the crew logs? So that's one of the perks of becoming a member of the Coffee Fund Cadre or Coffee Bar Club, is that we'll put out occasional crew logs. Nick usually puts them out a little bit more often than I do, but both of us have been guilty of kind of slacking off on that. And
Oh,
it has nothing to do
absolutely.
with
I mean,
LL
I
Slack.
said when I retired that I would be able to do little mini plane tails and all sorts of different
Right.
things.
What are you doing? You're not doing anything.
Well, somebody asked me then to put pictures on all my plane tails, and now plane tails takes me like 3 days.
I did not say, I didn't
Solid.
ask you to do that. I said, if you want to, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, from this point on, I don't want you to put pictures in your stupid plane tail. No,
Well,
no,
it
not
was
stupid.
Liz
Your
that
plane
ordered
tail.
me to, so...
Oh, Liz ordered you to. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and then HR came on and said, I gather you've been given a task. I hope you're up to it.
And then she was like, she had that big giant syringe with a giant needle in her hand
Yep.
when she was
Dr.
saying
Steph,
that to
yeah.
you.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
Dr. Steph.
With that evil
That's
look on
HR.
her face.
Yes. Yeah, you know what? Thank you, Neil, for reminding us that we're slacking off considerably on that. So I'll try to put out something. Now, my crew logs are more like behind the scenes, very casual, no production value whatsoever. Nothing like what Captain Nick does. Captain Nick's, everything he does is like super high production value.
Well,
it
used to be, but I had lots of
Yeah.
time. But I seem to be trying to cram a pint into.
You're
no,
just
a quart
doing too
into
much.
A pint pot.
What? You need to quit all this stuff. I thought you were retired. You just need to sit in a rocking
Yeah.
chair and look out the window
And do crew logs.
and crew logs. And
Yeah,
and
trouble
plane
is that it was great when I was flying and actually doing something I could talk about. Now I've got to
Yeah.
dream stuff up. It's much harder.
Yeah, I have found that he does make up a lot of things. So, just grain of salt. That's all I'm saying. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so we all set, Rickster?
Yes, sir. Good to go.
Okay, let's see. Let me go back here over here. I need a bigger screen. This 15-inch screen is just not big enough. I'm used to my very
15
large
inches is
30.
not big enough.
Or
16 inches high.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there.
You need an
Okay,
extra inch. Everybody needs an extra inch.
Trust me, it'll make all the difference. And we're talking about computer screens here, right?
Yes, we are.
yeah.
Yes, we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Let's start off our feedback segment with this audio feedback sent in from J.J. Pittsburgh. I'm not sure where he's from. Oh, I know. Pittsburgh.
Thanks to Philadelphia.
Yeah. In western Philadelphia, is that what you said? Okay. Here we go. JJ, take it away.
Greetings, APG crew. It's JJ Pittsburgh, driving around in Pittsburgh on a rainy Saturday night. Anyway, I was curious about flight hours. I understand that pilots, when they track their experience and amount of time in planes, they go by flight hours. But my question was, do you guys have a tally of the amount of flights that you've flown amongst the APG crew? And also, Dr. Steph, flying the general aviation, do you have a record of that? Because I was quite curious how many flights that you guys actually flown as a total, or even if you have like a rough estimate, maybe. Just curious about that, because I hear flight hours, and after so many like hours, it's all kind of like doesn't really mean anything, but total flights really kind of means something. I guess I thought of that because I drive rideshare, obviously, and one of the rideshare companies I drive for, they keep a tally of how many total rides, and I think I've done like 6,000 just doing driving part-time. So I can only imagine how many flights you guys have done. And also, even like members of the crew, like Liz, I know there's like flight trackers for passengers as well. So I was curious about that. Like someone like Liz or main man Micah, how many flights they've taken. Only because I'm obviously not a really experienced flyer, because honestly I found the podcast because of a fear of flying, and I've only taken 2 flights in my life, and that was back over, I'd say about 13 years ago now. So I look forward to getting on a plane again and adding to those 2 flights, which that's my total. So that's an easy one to remember. So anyway, I was curious about that. And once again, peace and love, peace and love. I got my second APG shirt, and I'm proudly sporting that. And I actually had a pilot that I picked up actually asked me about the shirt, and hopefully that recruited a new fan for the podcast. So now we're going to have at least 3. All right, guys. I will talk to you later. Peace and love. Peace and love.
What? 3? We have 3 listeners now?
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
Oh,
Wow.
Stephanie, wait a minute, hang on. What? Time out. Steph is in our chat room, but she's not here. Steph, what are you doing? You're supposed to be here on the show. What are you doing? Anyway, she says, yes, I'd have to tally up the total number of flights, though. Apparently she does keep track of individual flights. I did 49 loads of skydivers last weekend, but only got out of the plane like 4 times. So I think that if you divide 49 by 4 and you multiply by 72, that would give you the right answer.
You got to get the square root of that and multiply times pi, though.
Oh, yeah.
Apply
that's true.
standard deviation, so it's a little more complex than that.
Well, that would be a rounding because in a pie, it would be a rounding circular kind of.
And it also depends what kind of pie it is. Lemon meringue, blueberry,
good point.
apple. It kind of depends. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Neil says, do APG shirts help you pick up pilots? I need to get to the airport. Well, all you have to do to pick up a pilot is to wink and smile.
No, just put a can of beer and fishing line. That's it, and just drag it through the terminal. There you go. You pick up pilots.
That works too. Oh, wow, it's an interesting show for sure. I don't keep track. If I got paid per flight, I would keep track of those babies, but I don't. Yeah. How about you, Rick? Do you keep track of individual flights?
No. So so it's interesting because it's so as you progress in your training, you come up through your private pilot certification, instrument, commercial, single, multi, all that stuff. Your hours. The hours that you have, the amount of hours that you have really do count, because in order for you to get to the next stage, you need to have a minimum number of hours. And then at that point, that really is all that matters. But as you progress in this career, and you make it to the airlines, we, as you know, we are paid by the hour. And so that's the only reason why we keep track of flight time. I don't even keep track of flight time because to know how long I've been doing this. I mean, I honestly stopped counting how much flight time I have once I crossed 10,000 hours. That was kind of it for me. We do, however, you have the capability of syncing your electronic logbook, if you have one of those, with whatever software your airline has. Your bidding software, and so you can download your flight time from the bidding software from the company down to your electronic logbook, and a lot of people do that. And if you're old school, you can handwrite them into a logbook. And I see a lot of people, particularly the older fellas, with little pocket logbooks, and they'll write their flight information there, and then transfer that over to their big logbook at home. But no, that's not something that I done in a while. And as how many flights have I done over the last 20 years? I don't know.
A lot. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, me too. As Rick said, basically after I got hired by Acme, I just stopped entering data in a logbook. So, but the nice thing is that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. No.
I was going to say that you do. There is we go through medical exams every 6 months per the FAA requires captains to go through a medical exam every 6 months, and so you do enter a estimate of your flight time there. Doesn't have to be down to the second. So that's kind of every 6 months I do go back and kind of look at how much I've flown in that period, and then add that to whatever my total tally was 6 months prior, and kind of get a ballpark idea of what it is. But as Jeff was saying, I don't particularly keep track of down to the second.
I'm looking right now at my airline's database management system, I think we call it. And I pulled up my category block hours, and right now all my civilian, this is only civilian time, 20,677 hours with Acme, and then I had a couple of thousand with the Air Force coming in, and like 4 or 5 hours in my my logbook before I joined the Air Force. Yeah, so
you have to keep in mind though that flight time that Jeff has, 20,000 hours. It's a lot of flight time. But keep in mind that the average. What's your average flight?
I'd say probably an hour and 15 minutes.
So look at that.
Hour
That's
and a half, something like that.
That's gonna be good 18,000 flights perhaps,
or something like that. I don't know.
If you look at the. See,
I
have I don't know. I have north of 10,000 hours. But I think it's north of 11. I don't know. But then again, the average. I've always flown heavy, long haul type flights, and so I may not have as many flight sectors, but I have. I've been flying for the airline since 2003, 4-ish. So it's only 17 years. But I have 11-ish thousand hours, half of Jeff's. But the reason behind that is because my average sector is 6, 7, 8 hours.
Right.
And so that's why flight time really is subjective. Really, it's not really a measure of your experience, because a lot of that time you're just sitting up there doing nothing. Whereas Jeff has been stick and rudder 19,000 times over the last however many years you've been at Acme, and so it's relative, I guess.
Yep. Liz says she keeps a logbook of all her flights. No, she didn't. She said she doesn't keep track of any of that stuff, actually. Nick, do you keep track of? Did you keep track of actual?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about
individual flights, or just hours, or?
No, I had an electronic logbook which I kept going. The first one I had was an app on my phone, and the guy that made it stopped supporting it. So when I did an iOS update, I couldn't access it anymore and lost all that data. The next one, when I stopped subscribing to it, when I retired, I now can't access that data anymore. So I'm going, it's a bit of a waste of time, really. I'm a bit like Rick. Once I got my command and I was into the 10, 15,000 hours, I really didn't pay much attention to it. I knew that the company kept a record, so if ever I needed it for legal reasons, I could go there. I left the Air Force with about 4,700. I must have flown about...
That's a ton of hours in fighters, wow.
Yeah, 19 years, but it's not a huge amount. But I must have left the airline with about 17,000. And added on top, that's about 21,000 hours, which is not a very particularly big total, I don't think. So lots of people have flown much more than that. And if I divided that by the approximate number of civil hours per flight that I did, around 7-8 hours, must have been about 2,000 civil flights. And Air Force flights, the flight's about an hour and a half long. Average that out, it's got to be about 4,000 flights. Military flights, sorry. Yeah, military flights, yeah.
They're very
and this is an interesting topic here, because a lot of people wonder how pilots get paid. So particularly the airlines, you are paid by the hour, and it really depends on the equipment. I'm talking the U.S. U.S. Here. And actually, interesting, because when I flew in Chile, I wasn't paid by the hour. It was a salary job. But here in the States, you're paid by the hour, and it oftentimes based on the equipment that you fly, and and your seniority, or your how many years you've been with the company, up to I believe it's 12 years. A lot of pay scales end at 12 years. And so at that point, you make the I guess the highest possible pay per hour on that airplane, and you are paid what's called. Oftentimes, you don't fly. Say you don't fly. You only fly 3 hours an entire month, or 4 hours an entire month. It's not that you get paid just 4 hours for the entire month. You always get what's called minimum guarantee, and that's usually It depends on the company, whatever contract the company and the pilot group and management has. So the least amount that you will get paid that month is guarantee, which it varies. So you multiply whatever that guarantee value is by your pay rate, and that's what your pay is. And then anything that you say you fly more than guarantee, whatever you fly more than minimum guarantee over the month, and so you'll get paid your guarantee, and then each hour over guarantee you'll get paid that as well. And so and then there's other things. Overtime flying and training and all that, so it's a little bit more complicated. But
Neil asks, so if you're a bit short 1 month, do you do a few go-arounds to make up for it? Absolutely, we do. Or we go up there and
tell
say...
an American crew that are being paid by the hour because they taxi at about 3 knots. So, we used to get fed up. They're trying to make an extra few dollars by taxiing slowly. So
we do that,
and we go up, and then we'd like to do some holding for like a half an hour or so, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
This is something I never understood. How come if you're paid by the hour rate, how come you liked belting around the place in a 747 overtaking everybody?
Because it's just she just. It's not that we fly fast. Everybody else flies slow. It's really
it's funny when I started out at Acme as a flight engineer, and it was before we had everything computerized. The flight engineers, one of the most important job a flight engineer had at Acme back then was to do all the timesheets and keep track of. And I say timesheets because usually each pilot was on a different, like the captain may have been on a regular line, a regular schedule. The first officer might have been on a reserve schedule, so he's getting it. It's like all the calculations are completely different if this person's on reserve. And so anyway, I usually ended up having to do 2 or 3 of these sheets simultaneously.
Oh,
but
man.
I always thought, but the great thing about it is that you really learn the contract because you understand all the different credit, for various things. And by the way, if you ever expressed any kind of doubt about how these calculations were going, you got a lot of attention from the other crew members. they made sure that you got that right. And but the odd thing to me was, so like some captains I fly with, every half an hour or so it seems they were turning around. How are we doing with the time? Asking how the hourly tabulation was going for the flight. And then all of a sudden we'd be flying and air traffic control gives us a vector for traffic, and the guy would be screwing himself in the ceiling, complaining that we have to go out of our way to give way to somebody. I'm thinking, wait a minute, aren't you the same guy that like every 15, 20 minutes is asking me what our time is? And now we're actually making more time.
Right.
So, and that's the way we get paid. We get paid by the minute, basically, if you can break it down that way. And so it was always a disconnect to me. It's like the competitive nature of pilots came out when they were in the air, and I'm not going to take a vector for somebody else. No, they can take a vector for me.
Exactly. I'm not changing altitude, so I'm
right.
I'm fine here. Can
boss,
the other guy go any higher?
Yeah, or boss, do you think about you see that thunderstorm out there? Don't you think we should like deviate like left or right or something and not go? Nah, I don't want to do. It's like I got to get there on time. We're going. Why don't we deviate? That's the nice thing about being a captain now. Mm-hmm. We deviate.
Yeah, we
stay clear of those darn things.
Deviants.
Yeah. We are deviants, that's for sure. Yeah.
And as far as the timekeeping now, it's a lot easier because now, so you have different sensors on the airplane that are connected to the ACAR system, and so we'll start getting paid the moment the doors are closed and the brakes are released, and we'll stop getting paid the moment the brakes are set and a door is opened. And so whenever that happens, the system will automatically send that information to somewhere, and that'll get interpreted a certain way, and it'll tell you. And actually, when you get the readout of your time off, your time out, time off, time on, and time in, it'll give you your flight time to the minute and your block time to the minute, and that's how you'll get paid. And so there's no more guesswork. There's no milk in the system, none of that stuff. And so and since we don't fly around with flight engineers anymore, we don't have to worry about the flight engineer not carrying the one and screwing us out of 7 hours of pay. So that's always nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, before the day that data was gathered, we used to just print off a little strip of paper from the ACARS with the flight details on. And for years, I never put it into a logbook. I just put it into my bag, and then every now and again, I'd take a heap of these bits of paper and throw them into a big plastic bin liner. And this big bin liner got bigger and bigger as more flights were. Anyway, 9/11 came along, and I thought, oh wow, might lose my job here. Better update the logbook, make sure
those little scraps of paper
ready. Yeah, and I went into the big bin and laid out all these scraps of paper, and I had no idea that after a couple of years the ink fades.
Oh yeah, because
I had a bin full of white paper.
it's thermal paper. It's like that old fax machine, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
So how many hours do you have there, Captain Nick? I don't know.
Yeah, good question.
I have this many. Look at the bin right there.
Yeah, bring the bin in.
This
See all these little pieces of paper. Oh man.
Good, Nancy.
Well, that was it was an interesting query from our JJ Pittsburgh.
Yeah, good one.
Pittsburgh. Let's see. Let's move on with this one from Eden and Ed, huh? Oh, Nick B. I'm sorry, I skipped it. I was already advanced to that one, and then I went ahead and advanced again. It was a double. Never mind. Item number 4 from Nick B. In reference to Robert's feedback in episode 470 about the Delta 767's suite shoulder harness, and that's suite as in SUITE, shoulder harness, I thought I'd interject as a resident cabin interiors technical engineer. Wow. Didn't even know there was such a thing. I guess I just refer to them as SITE, Cabin Interiors Technical Engineers. My airline has also installed shoulder harnesses for herringbone installed seats, as the requirements for these is driven by the seat angle and the head injury criterion, the HIC, in the vicinity of surrounding suite furniture, IFE screens, tray tables, etc. Captain Nick quite rightly pointed out that the seats are not for aft in layout and mentioned that airbags, seatbelts can be used in some cases, though the angles are just too acute for the airbag lap belts to be effective to protect from HIC, head injury criterion. But the shoulder harnesses are only needed for TTOL. What the heck was that again? Don't know what that is. Did he tell us what TTOL is?
No, it's funny. Every time I see a acronym that I'm not familiar with, I have to go back to the beginning and read the whole thing over again. And oftentimes it's not even there. It's like, darn it, where the hell was the thing?
Well, I guess we should just know this, Rick, right?
I know. Well, actually, you should. I fly boxes, so yeah.
Total time over land. That's it.
I was thinking of
I'll buy it.
Tragic termination on landing.
Oh yeah, that is tragic. Anyway, I hope I've explained this sufficiently. You did, Nick B, except for the TTOL part. Anyway, on a side note, have you got any small world stories to share where you've ended up inadvertently meeting in a completely different part of the world where you first met or know them from? Yeah. These are commonplace in the airline industry, but the stories never grow old on me. Keep up the great work. The best 3 hours of entertainment each week. Thank you, Nick.
Oh, wow.
Very nice compliment. So, Nick, our Nick, straightened up.
I've got a couple of these. Mm-hmm. Now, the first was when I was still in the Air Force. And bear in the mind that I'm in the Royal Air Force here in the United Kingdom. I was on exchange tour in Australia. So I was flying the F-18. We did a deployment to New Zealand. So we've just landed in New Zealand. I'm literally the other side of the world. I get out of the jet. We say hello to the Kiwis, and they say, come along to the mess. We'll go to the bar and have a few beers. I walk into the bar, and there, leaning against the bar, was the guy I did my flying training with in the Royal Air Force, John Fiennes. And I looked at him and I went, John Fiennes, what the hell are you doing here? And he looked at me and we just went, what? How can this be? We're the other side of the world in this small New Zealand Air Force base bar. And he happened to be with Central Flying School, had been sent out to this base to help them standardize their flying instructors, and we just happened to be at the same base at the same time. That was just, for me, just incredible. But the funniest was in Narita. Okay, it's the spot in the world, I think, where all airline pilots meet. That in Hong Kong, but Narita's a great one. Anyway, there used to be a bar called Flyers Bar, run by a lovely Japanese chap called Hiroshi. And I walk in there, and I suddenly look across the bar, and there is a BA crew, British Airways crew there, and there is a very big first officer, blonde curly hair, who I instantly recognized. Now, when I was a flying instructor, he was one of my students, and he had a very, very nice pair of flying hands. He could do just about everything, but he matched that with a level of overconfidence and, might I say, arrogance. So one day I just about had enough. I brought him into the office and I basically stood him up and ripped him a new one and told him that no one really wants to hear his opinions on how good he is. Let his hands do the speaking for him. We acknowledge the fact that he's a very good pilot. He doesn't need to continually go on about it, and all he's doing is making himself unpopular, etc., etc. So I didn't really see much of him after that because he disappeared off. And I suddenly thought, because he's a big bloke, I wonder if he still remembers. So I tried to hide around the corner of the bar and had my back to him, and I'm drinking my beer with my crew. But of course, being BA pilots, they never go out with their cabin crew. They always try and get in with other airline cabin crews. So he eventually sauntered across to chat to our girls and spotted me and went, Nick Anderson! And I went, oh my God, here it comes. And he, gave me a big hug, bought me a beer, and he said, that chat you had with me that one day set me straight, was one of the best things you could have done to me at that point in my career. So I thought, oh, thank the Lord for that.
And you proceeded to take the helmet off at that point and just enjoy the rest of your night. That's excellent.
Yeah.
He took him outside and beat the crap out of him.
Well, he could have done. He was a big lad, but a very nice lad as it turned out. So there you go.
Oh, well, that's good. You did him some good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I did. It turns out I did, because I was just fed up with it.
Hey,
Well, sometimes it just takes somebody to say something like that to kind of
That's
like jar
exactly
people.
what I was gonna
What?
say.
Because everybody would be probably afraid to say anything to him, especially if it was a very large person.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you end up doing them the best favor you ever could, like Nick just pointed out here. And oftentimes that's all it takes. A little bit of a little bit of right rudder there to straighten yourself out, and
exactly right.
Make
Yeah.
make your career a
little bit of
good
guidance.
one.
That's all
Exactly.
people need sometimes.
That's right.
think
I agree with
my
you,
best-
Nick. Narita is. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick. Jeff.
No. So talk about Narita. We're still on Narita.
No, I was going to say that Narita, it's very, and I would venture to say even more so than Hong Kong, Nixter, because Hong Kong is quite spread out, and you can be in Wan Chai or you can be in anywhere, but Narita,
Yeah, it's true.
you have that one bit of a strip, the one where the ramen place is, and the barge and the jet lag and all, and everybody kind of hangs out in the same kind of spot there, and if you're gonna run in anybody, it's gonna be there, So,
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, yes. Yeah.
I was going to say my best small world story, whatever, is Jim Mayo. Jim is a guy that was kind of a classmate of mine when I was at Auburn University. And then in the Air Force, he was like a class ahead of me in pilot training. And then he went off and flew F-15s, I think, in Japan. Kadena, I think, is where he was flying.
Yeah, Kadena.
And then, I kind of lost track of him I lost track of him for a while. And then I, at survival training up in the Cascades at, was it Fairchild, I think, Air Force Base up there in north of Spokane. And we were doing the stuff and anyway, we end up in the same little grouping, and we were the only two officers, both second lieutenants at the time. And you're like, what are you doing here? I don't know. What are you doing here? And so we're grouped together. And so we that was fun. And then we ended up getting out of the Air Force relatively the same time frame, and has been flying for Acme. Of course, I haven't seen him in a number of years, but I'm assuming he's still at Acme Airlines. He's an old geezer like me, though. Maybe he retired early. I don't know. But so it seems like everywhere I turned around, he was there. It's kind of weird.
He's stalking you.
Yeah, well, probably not. He probably thinks.
But it is great that you've had careers that have sort of run in parallel. And
yeah,
fantastic.
That was interesting. I had some kind of like that happen to me too. Although I didn't run into this friend of mine at a bar, or restaurant, or SEER training or anything like that. Actually, it happened to me when I was in the in-dock at Acme Giant. There's a good friend of mine I went to flight school with at the old Delta Connection Academy down in Sanford, just north of Orlando. Okay. And he stayed behind. He did the whole instructor thing and went on to, so he instructed at the school, went on to fly for Comair, now defunct Comair. I went down to after I was done with flight school, I went back down to Miami, flew just a light aircraft around there, and shortly thereafter I ended up in South America for 13 years, and we come and meet at in-dock class for the 747. That was quite the experience because our careers were so different, his from mine, and it turned out that I was really, really lucky to make the decision to not stay and instruct there, and kind of go down to South America, which at the time was a little bit of people were calling me crazy for going down there. And I ended up having a great time, great experience. I flew great airplanes. I never had to, I mean, a lot of the stories that I hear from guys that have to fly for commuters, and and especially after 9/11, which was a really, really rough time in aviation, going through furloughs, and it's I was lucky, but it was really great to see him again in school and getting to fly the 747 with him. He's still there. So yeah,
it's funny. There's so many pilots. You think about all the number of employed pilots in the world, but it's still a very small community, and you keep just bumping into the same people over and over again. If you've made good friends, and like one of my mates said, on the way up, never slam doors, because one of these days you'll be back on the way down, and you'll need the help of that person. So
exactly right. Not only that, but make. I mean, don't make yourself famous for the wrong reasons, because you will be known industry wide, and I'm talking industry wide.
Yes, there's nothing better to do on a long flight than gossip about people you don't like.
Exactly right, and especially nowadays with this world of social media and you have to be very very careful and don't. Yeah, that's the thing, and that's just something that you shouldn't do. Not whether you're a pilot or not. You just don't talk behind people's back, and don't say anything bad about somebody else if they're not there to defend themselves, because it's just not the right thing to do. So
absolutely,
very true. All right. Well, thank you, Nick B, for sending in that feedback and spawning that great conversation. So now, Liz, is it okay if I go to number 5? I tried to do it earlier and you wouldn't let me. So I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, Av, I'm guessing. Edinen. He says, another view of the cranky controller. He says, listened to my first episode. Good fun. Now, he sent this back, let's see, a while ago. And we were talking, I don't remember exactly which episode it was, but we were talking about, somebody sent in that YouTube video with the audio of this controller down somewhere in Florida, right? I think. That was kind of giving people a bad time about this and that. And we thought that he was being unreasonably rude and cranky. And he said that, however, you seem to side with the pilots, and not with the controller after he put a clueless wonder into the penalty box. I learned from day one that when you call up, you say who you are, and where you're going, and what you want. And he quotes, I want to go to runway 35. Is so poor a response that the pilot deserved the treatment the controller gave him. It's the instructor's job to make sure the radio work is suitable, not the controller's. One man's opinion. Well, Av, thank you for sending the feedback. We do appreciate it. I just have to respectfully disagree with your perspective, because if the controller wanted to know where he was going as far as his destination, then he probably should have used the word, what's your destination airport, not where do you want to go, because he really did want to go to runway 35 to take off so he could go to the destination. I just thought it was very rude and short and uncalled for, actually. I wasn't necessarily siding with the pilots, but in this case, it just worked out that way. I mean, if a pilot had been a jerk, and by the way, I think at some point, I don't know if we're going to be able to get to it in today's show, but on an upcoming episode, we're going to hear a pilot being quite rude on the radio to a controller. So, it works both ways, actually. So it's more about, just... Okay, it is? All right. Liz is suggesting maybe we do that right away. Now, I'm not ready for that one, though, unfortunately. I didn't, I could always try to, I don't have enough time to do it. I'm sorry. I didn't do any prep on that particular one. But anyway, so just keep that in mind. Just remember our little discussion about the cranky controller and Av's objection to our perspective. And what do you guys think?
Yeah. A lot of it comes down to how you use your language and how you treat people. So treat people nice, make sure that you are asking the right question, giving the right information, and the world is a lot smoother.
Yeah. Well, it's the old saying, you can catch a lot of more flies with honey than something else. Vinegar? Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without Liz talking to me in my ear and giving me the right thing to say. Thank you, Liz. All right. Are we... No, we're not quite close enough. 20 more minutes. Okay, let's do some more feedback. And again, Av, thanks for sending in the feedback. We do appreciate it. Hope you're continuing to enjoy our show. Probably not 8 more, but anyway. Ben Ippolito from, I think he's down in Australia, isn't he? In the Sydney area, I believe. Anyway, he said, regarding start locks. Okay, remember we were talking about the accident where the start lock wasn't...
Three
was
jet
still engaged.
Talking about start locks. This is good.
I know, not a good idea. Anyway, he said that, but we do have somebody who flies turboprop, Steph, and so she was trying to help us out there. He said, Steph is on the right path with the torque, but it's actually the prop drag that is being minimized. And he says, cue the rickets. Okay, somebody cue the rickets. As is the norm for a multi-engine aircraft, the prop requires positive pressure to drive the prop into fine. Singles generally work in the reverse in that they need to pressure to coarsen. In the multi-engine, this is so that a loss of oil pressure will naturally cause the prop to move towards a course pitch, and if not stopped, feather. In the single engine case, it's reversed because you want to keep the engine producing thrust and have an RPM overspeed situation. It's a prop hub issue. Isn't everything? Which is easier to manage than a forced landing. As Steph said, the PT6 and other free turbines have two completely separate shafts for the gas generator and power turbine. Apparently, it's perfectly acceptable to hold the prop of the PT6 still whilst it's running. I wouldn't recommend it, though, lest it bite you. Also, this is how the ATR series aircraft get around not having an APU. They run the right engine in hotel mode with a prop brake applied. For engines like Garrett's venerable TPE 331, it's direct drive, so the one shaft powers the compressor, turbine, and gearbox all in one. So while in the PT6 you start the gas generator and the prop follows when it can, in the Garrett you need to spin the whole box and dice from the start, and if the prop were allowed to feather, you simply can't start the engine as it can't overcome the drag without pushing the EGT into the melty zone. The melty zone. I've seen a Metroliner that had a prop jump the locks, aka the locks weren't quite in correctly on start, and it went into feather and created quite the hung start. It's normal to select some reverse on shutdown to get the locks in. It's a game of oil pressure versus RPM. Don't be slow. And then after you start, you'll hear them select reverse briefly on each engine to ensure the lock clears. However, there's no cockpit indication of if they are in or not. But you'll get strange indications when you go to full RPM and power up for takeoff, like low torque and very high EGT, which I believe was the case in this accident that we were talking about, which kind of spurned the whole, or brought up the whole start lock discussion. It's possible to taxi the Metro with locks in, but you'll quickly find issues if you try to depart. Because it's because it's direct drive, the Garretts run at higher prop RPM than other turboprops, as the compressors need a certain minimum speed to be happy. So the difference between taxi and takeoff prop RPM is very small, and the blade angle does a lot of the work, unlike the free turbines, which can taxi with lower RPM and then it increases on takeoff with the increased gas flow. Because Jeff and Nick haven't flown piston props, interesting to note that Piston Twins also have start locks, just they are flight weight driven. This is why you need to feather before the engine goes below a certain minimum RPM. Otherwise, the lock will be in and it'll be impossible. Thanks to Rick for the rickets, which everyone would be hearing by now. So I guess we need to go ahead and play that right now. So let me see if I can. It's probably going to take me 5 minutes to find the darn thing. I can't even find the darn app. Okay, here we go. Rickets are coming up. Here we go. That's a rim shot, not rickets. I was hoping that rickets would be R, but it's not. I have to hit C for crickets. There we go. I should probably play that longer.
Oh, go on then. Very good. I'm just going to say flyweight, not flight weight, Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're flyweight because there are a pair of weights, I think, in the.
Oh, flyweight. Okay.
Yeah, that are centrifugally positioned.
Okay.
As the prop slows, those come towards the center and move things.
I see.
But I only did about, 10 hours on twin propeller-driven thing to get my initial instrument rating when I left the Air Force, so I don't really know much about it.
Well, apparently you know more than I do.
No, I just read it.
Right.
That's all I...
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, sometimes I just I read a couple different words together and then I just make up new words. Because that's just a talent I have. All right. Well, thank you, Ben, for that and putting half of our audience to sleep. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, nice one.
I did that.
I like the melty zone.
Yeah, I like the melty zone too. That's very cool. Try to avoid that melty zone if you can. David has a China update for us. He says, "Hi, team. I've recently started listening to your entertaining ramblings from my home in Beijing, China. While I applaud your enthusiasm, it seems you could use a little help on a couple of points China-related. Number one, Hong Kong is basically not part of China for aviation purposes. Last episode, you seemed fairly confused about why Cathay Pacific was suffering so badly when domestic Chinese aviation is booming. If I wanted to make a trip to Hong Kong from Beijing, or indeed anywhere else in mainland China, I'd go to the international Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau terminal of the airport. I'd have to do 2 weeks hotel quarantine in Hong Kong when I arrive, and another 2 weeks hotel quarantine when I return to China. In contrast, I can fly to, let me see, does he have that? Shenzhen. That's an easy one. I'm looking, he has a pronunciation guide for me. Guangzhou, or anywhere else that's a proper domestic flight without even doing any COVID tests. Long story short, there's no such thing as a domestic flight from Hong Kong. Number two, your pronunciation of Chinese city names is entertaining, but almost always wrong. Thank you. You're not the first person that's told me that. He says, no offense. No offense taken, by the way. Please cut out and keep my phonetic pronunciation guide to major Chinese airports. I do need, I'll make a digital Post-it note or something so I can keep these handy. Well, no, you know what, Liz? I think you should do that, and then you can just, in my ear, tell me how to pronounce these things. Okay. So, here we go. Guangzhou is Guangzhou. Chengdu, Shenzhen. Beijing's Daxing, D-A-X-I-N-G airport, PKX, excuse me.
Yes, just think of Christmas and dashing through the snow.
Oh, dashing through the Beijing. Okay. Chongqing. Oh, Chongqing. I used to eat that all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah, I like it too.
Oh, that's, let's see. Chongqing. Kunming. Kunming. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Oh, yep.
Shanghai's SHA airport. Hongqiao. Hongqiao. XI''AN, which is X-ray India Yankee, is Xi'an. Xi'an. Okay. And the Clay Warriors. Yeah, cool. I was thinking Marianne, though, in Gilligan's Island. I was just a little distracted there. Sorry. And I like Marianne better than Ginger. Hangzhou. Okay, so I've been mispronouncing that. That's a big surprise. Hangzhou. Very good. Thank you very much, David, for the pronunciation guide and for kind of explaining why we were a little bit off the mark when it comes to Chinese domestic flying. I thought that China kind of absorbed Hong Kong again, but I guess not. Not really. As far as aviation's concerned, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Liz is talking to me right now. I'm not having a stroke. She's suggesting that we do the plain tale now because some of the remaining pieces of feedback are a little bit on the long side, and maybe by then Rick will be back. So he had to leave us for a few moments. So why don't we play this week's installment of the Old Pilot's Plain Tales, this one entitled Mutiny.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. Mutiny. Air law is something that all pilots must have some knowledge of, or they wouldn't be awarded a license or a certificate. It's required. Having said that, it's a long way from being simple, and even a qualified air transport pilot will only have scratched the surface, yours truly included. So take what I say here with these caveats. The air laws that affect you depend on many factors. For example, the country your airline is based in, the country your aircraft is registered in, the country it is actually in, and in the past, even the country you were flying over at the time. The law also depends on what conventions those countries are signatories to, because there are many. Air law pretty much kicked off when man first took to the air, in a balloon, mind you, as air-cushioned vehicles are not regarded as aircraft by the International Civil Aviation Organization. The laws of the Romans in the maxim, "Who owns the land owns even to the skies," and other ancient laws generally granted the landowner all rights to the air above and the earth below. Had this continued, flight just about anywhere would have been extremely expensive, as was demonstrated following the first few flights by the Montgolfier brothers and other early balloonists, who were tried in common law several times for overflying land that didn't belong to them. The first law specifically pertaining to aircraft was enacted in Paris in 1784, and was an ordinance of one Lenore, a lieutenant de police, in Paris, prohibiting balloon flights without special permits. This was quickly followed by similar enactments in Namur and Hamburg. The first regulation for safety in air navigation was made in 1819 by Count d'Anglis, a police prefect of the Scene Department, requiring balloons to be equipped with parachutes and prohibiting aeronautic experiments during the harvest. I'm assuming that the parachutes were to be worn by the balloonists and not the balloon. Even back in 1819, people realized how risky ballooning was. In 1908, the Council of Kissimmee City in Florida enacted the first air traffic regulation, which stated that the airspace subject to the legal control of the city extended upwards to a limit of 20 miles. The first customs regulations for aviation were brought in 1909 by the French Prime Minister, imposing duties on balloons from abroad, and this is when international laws kicked off. In January 1822, the first case of a tort committed by an aviator was decided by the New York Supreme Court. A balloonist had made a forced descent upon the plaintiff's land and attracted large crowds who trespassed thereon and caused damage. It was held that the defendant was liable in trespass. With these worrisome balloonists going around causing trouble, a uniform set of international laws were obviously needed, and there followed a tedious number of conventions, starting in Paris with the 1919 one and followed by many others. A biggie was the Chicago Convention in International Civil Aviation in 1944, when it was decided that airspace was an appurtenance associated with the subject territory and shares the latter's legal status. However, like the high seas, airspace over the oceans should be free up to the limits of outer space. The Chicago Convention also laid down the tedious requirement for the pilot of every aircraft and the other members of the operating crew of every aircraft engaged in international navigation shall be provided with certificates of competency and licenses issued or rendered valid by the state in which the aircraft is registered. And there shall be maintained in respect of every aircraft engaged in international navigation a journey logbook, in which shall be entered particulars of the aircraft, its crew, and of each journey. Most of this was actually maritime law, with maritime crossed out and aviation penciled in. Now we come to the crunch part for those of you who like to get drunk on an airliner and scream at the crew. For a long time, the failure of states to extend their criminal laws to their aircraft whilst they were outside national territory posed a serious problem. When a crime has been committed on an international flight, things got complicated. It wasn't until 1963 that the Tokyo Convention on Offences and certain other acts committed on board aircraft that things were settled. Contracting states were obliged to extend their criminal law and jurisdiction to aircraft of their registry when they were outside national territory. The convention, furthermore, gives the aircraft commander power to ensure law and order on board his aircraft and to disembark any offender in any contracting state in which the aircraft lands. Initially, illegal acts against an aircraft, for example seizing it, were treated like piracy, But walking the plank or hanging from the yardarm was a problem on an aircraft, so we got our own thing, hijacking. It became the responsibility of the state in which the aircraft lands to take all appropriate measures to restore control of an aircraft hijacked in flight to its lawful commander. What's more, the commander of an aircraft now has final authority as to the disposition of the aircraft while in command. This specifically empowers the commander to override any other regulation in an emergency. This provision mirrors the authority given to the captains of ships at sea with similar justifications. It essentially gives the commander the final authority in any situation involving the safety of a flight, irrespective of any other law or regulation. After the dust has settled, however, there better be a reasonable explanation ready at hand. In the military, one might have assumed that things would have been pretty tight and mutiny unheard of. Let me set you straight there. There are a few that I know of, so let's start with the U.S. Army Signal Corps pilot revolt of 1915. It was the early days of fixed-wing aviation in the U.S. Army, and the story revolves around the court-martial of Judge Advocate Lieutenant Colonel Goodyear. The Signal Corps had taken an interest in ballooning and then fixed-wing, with the purchase of some Wright military flyers and later some air machines from Glenn Curtiss. The manufacturers initially provided flight instruction for officers, but Army policy only allowed them to be detached from their primary job for 4 years, at the end of which they had to return to their infantry, cavalry, artillery, or whatever. This Manchu law, as it was known, made it very difficult to develop a pilot force with long-term flying expertise. Additionally, much angst developed amongst the pilots over the administration of flight pay, seen as a form of hazardous duty pay, given that 1 in 4 pilots were being killed in aircraft accidents. An unhealthy competition soon grew between pilots trained in Wright aircraft versus those trained in Curtiss ones. Aircraft accidents, sometimes fatal, generated blame between the two camps. To add to the problems, the Brigadier General moved all flight training operations to North Island, California, and established a new Signal Corps flying school under a Captain Arthur Cowan. Cowan was a signals officer who had absolutely no knowledge of aviation operations whatsoever. Problems with his junior pilots soon arose. Cowan would accuse his lieutenants of unauthorized stunting when accomplishing a simple go-around or flying dangerously over hangars when setting up for a landing. Often he singled out particular junior pilots as targets of his ire. He also opposed requests for experiments with firing machine guns or dropping bombs from aircraft. Cowan even mismanaged his budgets for spare parts and then blamed his subordinates for not keeping the aircraft airworthy. After a few years of such mistreatment, the young officers discovered that Cowan had been drawing flight pay without being a pilot. Several junior pilots drew up charges against him and took them to Judge Advocate Lieutenant Colonel Goodyear. Cowan's connections at Signal Corps headquarters ensured that the charges would be dropped, and then the Signal Corps leaders charged the Judge Advocate with inappropriately advising the lieutenants. Prosecutors then made the mistake of asking the young pilot witnesses open-ended questions that allowed them to expose Cowan's poor leadership and the Signal Corps' mismanagement. The press and Congress had a field day. Goodyear was merely reprimanded, and an Inspector General soon exposed the flight school's shortcomings. The resulting National Defense Act of 1916 created an environment that properly prepared an air service for action in the First World War and prevented the United States Air Force from still being called the U.S. Signal Corps Aviation Balloon and Airplane Flying Division thing. A more serious subject was the 1945 Freeman Field Mutiny at Freeman Army Airfield, a base near Seymour, Indiana. Before and during the Second World War, the U.S. military, like much of American society, was segregated by race, but in response to pressure from leaders such as Philip Randolph and Walter White, President Roosevelt opened the Air Corps to black men who volunteered to become fighter pilots. The story of the Tuskegee Airmen should be well known to us all by now. But other units were also formed, such as the 477th Bombardment Group flying B-25 Mitchells. With only 175 officer crew members, they were badly undermanned, and some believe that the Army were holding the unit back from full combat readiness. Segregation was a major source of poor morale, as the commander of the 1st Air Force, despite regulations to the contrary, insisted on strict social segregation of black and white officers. The officers' clubs were supposed to be open to all officers, regardless of race, but the club at Selfridge was closed to black officers, a situation that led to an official War Department reprimand being issued to the Selfridge base commander. The 477th were abruptly moved to Goodman Field at Fort Knox, where the officers' club was open to blacks. Not that it made them feel any better, as the white officers had moved to the club at Fort Knox instead, as it was restricted to only those with guest memberships. Now at full strength, a return to Freeman Base was ordered, and it became apparent that there were now 2 officers' clubs on the base. Number 1 for trainees, all of whom were black, and number 2 for instructors, all of whom were white. Second Lieutenant Coleman Young, the future mayor of Detroit, decided to challenge the segregation, and with a group of black officers entered the number 2 club to seek service. They were turned away, and the armed officer of the day was posted at the door to prevent entry to the black officers. When 19 black officers of the 477th returned, they were arrested and confined to quarters, as were another 17 later. The next night, another 25 officers were arrested during a 2-day protest. In the end, a total of 61 serving officers, all black, were charged. A regulation was drawn up, and all the officers of the 477th were told to read and sign it, acknowledging the requirement to stay away from the Instructors' Club. They were ordered to read and sign or face arrest under the 64th Article of War for disobeying a direct order by a superior officer in time of war, an offence that technically could be punished by death. In the end, 101 men were arrested for failing to sign. Pressure from Congress, labor unions, and African American organization was brought to bear on the War Department, and finally the Chief of Staff, General George C. Marshall, ordered the men released. 3 officers accused of shoving the officer of the day received general courts-martial, and although 2 were acquitted, the third, Second Lieutenant Roger Terry, was fined $150, suffered a loss of rank, and was dishonorably discharged. 3 years later, President Harry S. Truman issued Executive Order 9981, racially integrating the United States Armed Services. In 1995, in response to requests from veterans of the 477th, the Air Force officially removed letters of reprimand from the permanent files of 15 of the 104 officers charged in the Freeman Field protest, and promised to remove the remaining 89 letters when requests were filed. Roger Terry received a full pardon, restoration of rank, and a refund of his fine. A year later, it was the Royal Air Force's turn to suffer the ignominy of a mutiny. At the end of the Second World War, the slow progress of demobilization was a major problem for the armed services, particularly for those who had been pressed into service. They wanted to return to their civilian lives and find decent jobs before the thousands who were returning ahead of them filled the few vacancies. The return to civilian life depended on a demob number based on the length of service, and for many, particularly those serving abroad, it meant a long wait. As the months dragged on, with rumours of transport being used to move GI brides to America, whilst the RAF men sat in Karachi waiting in vain, they began to hold secret meetings on the football pitch in the dark. They voted for a leader to take their grievances to the commanding officer. The mutiny started, mildly enough, as a protest by refusing to prepare kit for inspection and go on parade in casual khaki drill rather than best blues. There is no doubt that men held away from friends and family in pretty dismal conditions, heat, flies, and poor food, when the war was over, had pretty low morale, and this was a small protest. On the next parade, as the mutineers spread around the parade ground in their khakis, the CO came and started to speak to them and listen to their complaints. He promised to take their messages higher. Eventually, a delegation were selected to meet the Air Commodore from Delhi, who listened and then agreed to meet nearly every problem that the men brought up. A petition pleading for faster demobilization was sent to the Prime Minister. Food and accommodation were improved and many of the tedious drills and parades cancelled. The men at Karachi were content, but news of their rebellion had spread, and at the height of the strike, nearly 50,000 men at over 60 RAF stations in India, Ceylon, and as far away as Singapore stopped obeying orders. Although some of the ringleaders at other stations faced courts-martial, the unrest was ultimately quelled, mainly through negotiation. The men had fought a war and they wanted to go home. Everybody understood. However, the precedent set instigated subsequent actions by both the Royal Indian Air Force and Navy when 78 out of 88 ships mutinied. The Viceroy of India commented at the time, "I am afraid that the example of the Royal Air Force, who got away with what was really a mutiny, has some responsibility for the present situation." At its height, the 1946 Royal Air Force strike extended beyond Southeast Asia, through the Middle East to Egypt and North Africa, even as far as Gibraltar. However, in all cases, the mutinies remained peaceful.
So, I'm wondering if Captain Nick chose this title because they're planning some sort of a mutiny here at the
We're going to have a takeover. Either that or we're just going to stop pitching up, like Rick.
Oh, yeah.
And Steph.
Yeah, that's right. Rick has just decided to, self-mutiny, I guess.
He's had enough, yeah. I'm not obeying orders anymore.
Yeah. I guess I'm just a cruel dictator, and he just had enough of it.
It's not fair,
yeah, I'm a
is it?
scary ogre for sure. Yeah, very, very nice, interesting one. Yeah, lots of historical data in there that I didn't know anything
those
about.
origins of our air laws, they're basically, they're transferred. Most of them transferred from the maritime world.
Right.
But, I tried to make head or tail of them, and it became a mire of language, and that's the problem with legal language. Unless you've been trained to understand exactly what these terms mean, you can get yourself in a complete tangle. So I moved away from trying to describe air law into talking about mutinies, which seemed a lot easier.
A lot easier to figure that one out. Yeah,
you know what's going on. But I tried to pick three mutinies that although one of them has had, is very serious in what we see now occurring in both of our countries. The other two are quite tongue-in-cheek, I think.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you, Nick. That was 50 minutes left. I'm hearing from the control room.
50
so
minutes.
That's good.
Wow.
Yeah, we can knock out
get through a lot.
quite a few of these things, right? All right. So let's continue on then with something that was sent in a while back from Mazutz, one of our Coffee Fund cadre members. And Mazutz Korim, and it is, I'll just start reading from the top. Hope you are all keeping well. You certainly all continue to sound cheerful every week and brighten up the life of this listener on the other side of the pond, as well as all the rest of your audience, I'm sure. I came across this news story the other day. And then he gives us a link to that, and it was something, a title about Bridge Stunt Leads to ADS-B Revocation. Let me continue reading his feedback. That was the headline, which is a confusing headline, actually. I'm not sure if this the type of thing that you would normally consider, but I would be interested in your view on this incident about a highly experienced pilot instructor examiner who succumbed to a spur-of-the-moment urge to fly under a bridge and is now appealing the sanctions being imposed against her. Also, I just wanted to say a special thank you to Captain Nick for his most recent plane tale, the S to Z of aviation. As someone who has the last letter of the alphabet appearing twice in his name, Mazoots, I have often an interesting time when asked to spell it when visiting the U.S., depending on how mischievous or keen on promoting UK pronunciation I'm feeling at the time. Of course, I have to choose my moments carefully. In view of my ethnic background, whenever I fly into the U.S., I'm almost always blessed by being invited into the back room for a couple of hours hospitality, courtesy of the U.S. border officials. Probably not the best time to have a discussion.
The bane of our life if you're an international crew trying to get into America.
It's a shame.
This said with feeling.
That is a shame. Is that better?
That's a little better, yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think this is very fair at all. Probably not the best time to have a discussion about language and pronunciation. Yeah, probably best to keep it simple, right?
Yes, exactly.
Keep up the great work, and I believe the customary sign-off is Talons, Douglas. You're right.
Well done.
Very best wishes, Mazuz Karim. And so, let's tackle this this issue, this article that he sent a link to for us. Again, the title, the headline here. I'm guessing that the person that wrote this was not the person who came up with this headline, because it doesn't make any sense at all. And this is from AvWeb. So again, the headline is Bridge Stunt Leads to ADS-B Revocation. A well-known Ohio pilot and aviation columnist may be the first to run afoul of a new regulation triggered by the ADS-B mandate enacted in 2020. Martha Lunken, 78, who pens a popular column in Flying Magazine and is a fixture in Midwest aviation, flew under a bridge near her home airport, which bears her name, in southern Ohio in March of 2020. An impulsive and immature stunt, she told AvWeb, she knew was wrong. But she said a coincidental malfunction of her Cessna 180's transponder with ADS-B out may have resulted in her being slapped with an emergency revocation of all her certificates, instead of the suspension that normally accompanies each or such transgressions. So, to be clear, the bridge stunt that she did led to her certificate revocation, not her ADS-B. I'm pretty sure she still has the ADS-B in her airplane. Anyway, Lunken said that after she had crossed flying under a bridge from her bucket list, she headed home and checked in with Cincinnati Approach and was told her transponder was off. She said she reset it and set a new code, and it resumed working. In their subsequent investigation, FAA officials said that she'd shut it off on purpose to stop the system from tracking her while she threw caution to the wind. Lunken, a longtime former FAA safety inspector and veteran flight instructor, vehemently denies the charge. I know what I did in that cockpit, and I did not turn it off, talking about the ADS-B. The agency used a new section of its Legal Enforcement Actions Guidebook for FAA staff, which calls for revocation of a certificate for operating an aircraft without activated transponder or ADS-B out transmission for the purposes of evading detection. The section was added in a package of other amendments in January of 2020, just after ADS-B became mandatory in most controlled airspace, and about 2 months before Lunken's flight of fancy. The section is on page 9-14 at the bottom. Okay. Lunken said she took the 180, Cessna 180, to her avionics tech, who said the transponder seemed to be loose in its mount when he took it out. It tested fine on the bench and after it was reinstalled. The FAA interviewed the tech. Lunkin said that the tech was unable to tell them whether the device was malfunctioning during the flight. She said now it's her word against the FAA's on whether the intermittent ADS-B out signal was a malfunction or a deliberate violation. She said radar tracks that were part of the evidence against her showed the ADS-B signal from her aircraft to be intermittent. She speculates she jarred the connections loose during a few bone-jarring landings in gusty crosswinds. I'd made several rather brutal landings at OH-77, the 32-foot wide concrete crosswind strip just north of the bridge, and it was bumpy at low levels, she said. I did not turn it off. She spent 60 years flying in that area, and that if she was trying to prevent Big Brother from watching her do something, there are myriad easier and virtually undetectable ways to do it. The FAA declined comment and suggested AvWeb submit a Freedom of Information Act request to review the agency's evidence supporting their findings. A spokesman said that's agency policy on legal matters. As for the stunt itself, which has been the focus of most of the social media attention and reaction, she said it was just a silly, spur-of-the-moment thing. I looked over my left shoulder, I saw the bridge, and I thought, I just have to fly under that bridge before I get old. I love that. She's 78 years old. The Jeremiah Morrow Bridge is 239 feet above the Little Miami River Gorge, and Lunkin said she didn't have to draw very heavily on her 14,000 hours of experience to get to the other side. It certainly didn't take any skill, she said. As for it being a reflection of her attitude towards safety and the regs, she said nothing could be further from the truth. It's not part of a pattern of behavior, and I'm not an irresponsible pilot, she said. I would never have put anyone in danger. A security camera snapped a picture of her passage, and the FAA sent her a letter a few weeks later saying that they were investigating. Anyway, it goes on to talk about, well, heck, I'll just read the rest of it because we've already come this far and we're getting close to the end. She said she expected to be sanctioned, thinking she might have to sit out for a period of weeks or months. FAA enforcement guidelines call for a period of suspension of 30 days to 4 months for the bridge stunt, which is a violation of altitude and distance from objects regs. I knew it was illegal, and I did it anyway, she said. I'm 78, and I'm still not very mature, and I hope I never am. When she didn't hear anything after 6 months, she thought that the FAA had dropped the matter. The emergency revocation letter was delivered March 19th. Lunkin said she's considered appealing the revocation, but her lawyers estimated the cost at $25,000. Instead, she's spending her time watching from the ground while others fly and hitting the books to reclaim her private pilot certificate. Revocation cancels all certificates and ratings. She was all the way up to an ATP, and she has to start over to get back in the air. So far, it's been an eye-opener as she studies for the written. A lot has changed in 60 years, she said. Normally, a revocation prevents the guilty party from taking flight training for a year, but her legal team negotiated a 3-month reduction. I'll be a student pilot in December, she said. Lunkin will also be on hiatus from Flying Magazine for an unspecified period of time, but will write a column in the August issue explaining the incident. She said she has kept her editors informed of all developments in her case, which flying officials confirmed. So there you go. That's the case. She decided that that bridge looked awfully tempting.
Inviting?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And inviting, yeah. And so she said, yeah, what the heck, I'm going to go for it. And apparently they think that she was trying to be extra sneaky and turned her ADS-B off intentionally to hide the tracks. And she said, nope, that's not the case. But yeah, so she had her ratings revoked, and now she's going to have to go back to from square one to get all. I mean, if I were her, you know, being 78 years old, I'd think, yeah, I had a good run. I'm good. But apparently she's quite a stubborn person.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it is an incredible coincidence that just as she decided to do this illegal flying maneuver, her ADS-B turned off. So there's no physical evidence to support her theory. that it was intermittent. It would appear, from someone outside of this environment, that she turned it off, flew under the bridge, and assumed that she would not be tracked. So I don't know. She's admitted flying under the bridge. I'm actually surprised that the maximum penalty she would have received for that was so little. I would have thought that would have been quite a serious breach of air regulations, but apparently not. But turning off your ADSB, and the fact that they've said, look, we're happy to give you all the legal and all the evidence we have to support our case if you just apply for a freedom of information, makes me think that the FAA probably haven't got much to hide. There's probably no conspiracy here. They're doing what they think is right. I have to say, since she was offering advice to other people as an instructor and as a contributor to a famous flight magazine, I find this actually very hard to justify her decision to do this. I just don't understand that at all. It doesn't compute.
It almost,
with me.
it almost sounds like she took an educated or a calculated risk for doing this, thinking, well, I know what the penalty is if I do this, and to me it's worth it. But she had not counted upon the enforcement action in connection with the ADSB being intentionally turned off. And I mean, Luger has an interesting point. He said the problem is the new rule. ADSB is for safety, not a prosecution tool.
Well, the fact is it wasn't used as a prosecution tool because they had no data from it. So had she left it on and they used the data from the ADSB to back up their assertion that she went under the bridge, that would have been a prosecution tool. The fact that there was no ADSB trace shows that it wasn't being used in that thing. What they did was say, what you did was illegal, and to prevent you being caught, you turned the ADSB off. That is a violation in two areas. So I don't think it's fair to resist the use of ADSB on the grounds of this case, personally. That's just my opinion.
And we do also, they said that they had the photographic evidence of the security camera showing her.
Yeah, she might not have realized that was there, or she might
probably
not. Have done it,
Darn it! I didn't know they were in the camera.
That's exactly right.
Let's see.
I mean,
Neil
people
says,
have flown under all sorts of bridges, haven't they?
Yeah, you talked about it on Plain Tales a few times, I think.
But that's way back. We're not talking modern times, so people know you're not supposed to do that kind of thing. And I don't care how good a pilot you are. It carries an increased element of risk that is completely unnecessary. So,
okay, well, hang on a second. Let me get my piece of paper out here and scratch this thing off my bucket list. Okay.
Well, on your last flight, right, on this 717, you've got to do it. You've got to find a bridge
of course.
to fly under.
I'm going to do a barrel roll. Keep it all 1G, of course.
Oh, yeah, perfect. See if you can do it without spilling all the drinks.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go for that. Just kidding. Neil asks, could she have arranged to do this legally if it was a bucket list thing? Yeah, I think there's a legal provision for bucket list flying. No, I don't know.
I certainly think, film companies and stunt pilots, read Gives You Wings, that drinks company. Their flying teams do these kind of stunts all the time.
Red Bull.
Red Bull. They must have provisions to be able to get an authorization for it.
Yeah, I think there is a way to do it. There's probably a process, and it's probably not granted for everyone, of course. But, there's... Okay, one last point from Luger. Same thing in Germany. As soon as you stray into any airspace, you're fined. Consequently, people turn it off. Naughty, naughty, you Germans.
Well, I wonder if there's the same penalty if you turn off
I don't know.
your ADSB.
I don't know. Interesting story, interesting questions, interesting coincidence. Or is it?
Yeah.
We'll have to
visit
this story again, see what happens.
Yeah, I'm going to keep an open mind, but I know which way I'm trending.
Okay. Masha has the last point. It's legal if you're Tom Cruise. Way to go, Masha.
Exactly.
All right. Good. So let's continue on with this. Now I'm going to try to, while we're covering this, maybe get some pictures set up for you. Maybe, Nick, can you start off with reading feedback from Ray?
Absolutely. This is from Ray Williams in Alpharetta, which is not far from you, I think, just
That's
under the bridge.
Yeah, well, right, yeah.
Or
probably
near
a bridge there somewhere.
Near the dead chicken.
Yeah, well, no, I'll just move on with his feedback.
Okay, fair enough. I was listening to episode 470 earlier today, and as usual, I enjoyed the plain tales. Very kind of you. Especially Captain Nick's reference to the Flettner Syncropter. Back in the halcyon days of 2016, there was an APG meetup at
Toccoa. I know how to pronounce that one. Toccoa.
Well done. Kilo Tango Oscar Charlie up north in Georgia. It was November, and there were some forest fires in the area. Back on a small ramp in the northeast corner of the aerodrome was a Carmen K-Max K1200 Syncropter. Serial number Alpha 940027, November 115 of Central Copters Incorporated. In some of the attached photos, the lifting cable can be seen. It was attached to a collapsible bucket with which it would scoop up water and scuba divers from a dam or similar and then go drop it on the fire. As Captain Nick mentioned, the V-aligned shafts meant that the rotor blades were low at the sides of the copter, and there's a prominent warning on the rotor assembly body. What's it say? Have you found that one, Jeff?
Which one?
Warning. Approach to the warning. Warning approach
right here.
From
there you go.
Front. There you go. Central Copters Inc. Yeah. Let's hope that with the new vaccines and more people getting vaxxed, we can get back to having more meetups like the one we had at, where was it?
Toccoa,
thanks. Take care, folks. Stay safe. Later, Ray Williams. Well, isn't that great? Thanks very much, because it's fascinating. I have never seen one of these, but particularly that last one, the one with all the blood splattered on the fuselage.
It's an attractive looking helicopter, isn't it? Yeah, apparently.
You can.
Yeah,
because it's obviously taken a few heads off. It's a bit of a worry. It's that last one is the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Right.
With all the globules of blood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, it's very very messy.
Down the fuselage, yeah.
It's a bloody mess, as you guys would say.
if you ever approach one of these, hands and knees, that's what you need. Come in on your hands and knees.
Yeah,
or
just stay away from it completely.
Yeah, I mean, this is the perfect use for it because of its ability to carry a heavier load than a conventional tail-rated helicopter. Because obviously it wants to carry a large weight of water.
Yeah. True.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Ray Williams, my neighbor to the north in Alpharetta. Robert writes in. He is from Australia. He says, more join the race for supersonic flight. Is this a new era of aviation emerging? And he sent us a link to a simpleflying.com article. Australia joins the race for a supersonic flight. A Ukrainian-Australian joint venture is eyeing supersonic passenger flights across the Pacific. A low-profile Australian company with space and supersonic aspirations has teamed with a Ukrainian engine designer and jet engine manufacturer to push the boundaries of commercial passenger flights. Anyway, we'll have a link to this article in the show notes if you want to read the whole thing. But it's interesting. It looks like everybody's wanting to get into this supersonic game. Is there any activity over there, Nick, in the United Kingdom or any
Only
of the European?
that Richard Branson of Virgin has put some money towards, I think, the Boom project.
Yeah.
There was,
okay.
But other than that, no. But this looks like a substantial airplane, a 100-seater. Can get from Sydney to LA in 6 hours. So
so it's a larger, instead of the ones that we've been reading about or talking about are more like business class. You know,
that's right. Yeah, Boom Supersonic. That's the one I think that Branson's interested in.
And then Airline is the one that is down in Melbourne, Florida.
Oh wow!
And I think that they have some support from Airbus, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Cosmovision is an interesting name. I guess it's more Ukraine than Australian, but yeah. They all seem to be very similar, all very Concorde-like. Some of them have podded underwing engines, a bit like this one. But, you know, they're all basing their flights around relatively high-speed over oceans and then coming down to a little over Mach 1 when they're over land to keep that pressure change down so that it becomes acceptable.
Yeah.
It is interesting, isn't it?
It is.
I think it's a bit like all these commercial balloons projects. Very few of them get off the ground.
Here we go with the balloons again. You somehow manage to always bring it up. Every single show, Nick.
I love it. Yes.
All right. Continuing, I think we still have some time left. Item 11 from Wim. Some feedback from Belgium. Or some random feedback from Belgium.
They have great beer in Belgium. I love the way they pour the beer and use that spatula to carve off the top of the head. It's just such a fine art.
And those naturally fermented ales they have there. Pretty cool. Only recently started listening to the APG podcast. Where have you been, man? As I miss traveling on airplanes very much, so listening to people talk about aviation has to fill the void a little. You guys talking about accidents is very interesting and educational. Listening to you guys is very educational, and especially thanks to Nick for plugging and participating in the Air Crash podcast episode about Air France Flight 447.
Thanks for listening.
It was a very interesting episode, specifically as I might be traveling across the pond on an Airbus A330 in the future. All I can say is, good luck. No, I'm just kidding. People ask me, why do you listen to these kind of things? Do you want to be scared of flying or traveling on particular types of aircraft? But the point is that when aviation incidents are discussed and analyzed on podcasts like APG, it actually makes me less scared, as it shows the lessons that were learned and the measures that have been put in place to avoid any similar accidents in the future through better training of the pilots, newer and better security systems, or better procedures. So thank you for doing this kind of stuff, and please keep doing it. Okay, we will. I was thinking about not doing it, but okay, we'll keep doing it.
Just for you.
Yeah, it's very enlightening, more so when you guys also point out the recommendations and measures taken that came out of the investigations, as those are very reassuring. I eagerly await the all clear to start booking my tickets and get back on board again. Sadly, Nick has retired. Well, I don't know. Depends on your perspective, I guess. Or Virgin Atlantic would have been at the top of my list of choices on the off chance of running into him. Well, all you have to do is just head down to Hampshire, and you'll run right into him.
Yeah.
Yeah, or is it Hartford or Hereford? I don't know. I can't keep them straight.
No idea anymore. I've lost track.
You're not really sure either. Thanks for, or Cornwall. Yeah, you might, if you head down there, you might see him. Thanks for keeping the virtual cockpit doors open so we can keep having the view from your side. Kind regards, Wim. I like that name, Wim. So he just decided to send us some feedback on a whim.
Oh, very good. Very good.
And a prayer on a whim. No, it's a wing and a prayer, Liz, not a whim and a prayer. Oh, man. Yeah, so thank you for listening in Belgium, and send us some of that great beer. Or maybe we should go over there, and you can host us, and we'll
That's a good idea.
Drink a lot of it. Yeah. All right. Continuing on. Oh, Ant, is he still with us in the chat? Probably not. He's a busy man. Yeah. Oh, well. He was with us in the live audience earlier, and let's read this. Ant's a funny guy. Okay, he says, "Hello, Miss Liz, Dr. Steph, Captain Nick, Captain Rick, and Lieutenant Jim Dangle. Captain Jeff. Hope you are all doing well. I'm unbelievable, as always." Yeah, you are unbelievable, for sure.
Yeah.
So we've had some people say that I remind them of Lieutenant Jim Dangle of the Reno 911, I think was the name of that show. Anyway, very funny, by the way. I wanted to reach out and ask a few questions about the crew. In your downtime, do you all watch any aviation channels on YouTube? If so, which? I watch a few plane spotting channels and love them. Granted, at times it's a bit mindless, but it's also therapeutic, as white noise. And then he says, also love the occasional voice pop-in of Miss Liz, especially that "Lucky You" recording. I've always had a bit of affinity for Dr. Steph's voice, but Miss Liz has a great voice too. Makes my liver quiver. Lord have mercy. That's what, or lot of mercy, I think is the way he spelled that. That's great. Oh, so if you want to be reminded about what he is talking about, let me see if I can find the Liz disclaimer in our... Okay, here we go.
Pardon the interruption. When we're recording the show live, the only person who can hear me is Captain Jeff. Now he's decided to include my audio here in the post-show edit. Lucky you. Enjoy.
Lucky you. And then, of course, if you want to be reminded of Dr. Steph's voice.
16 inches high.
There you go. Can't get enough of that one. All right. Anyway, Ant says, thank you all for everything you do to inspire, encourage, and even educate those interested in being part of the aviation community. All the best to you all. Create and dominate. So, again, that's Ant, who apparently is... oh, I'm sorry. I'm misinterpreting that. Anthony Pruitt. And
what's RAP 2?
I'm not sure.
And what's RAP 2?
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Is he still with us?
I doubt it.
Oh, okay.
He was in earlier, as you rightly said.
I don't know what that... Oh, wait. I bet I know. I bet his first name is not Anthony. I'll bet that his first name begins with an R, and A stands for Anthony, and P for Pruitt, and he's probably a second. A junior.
There you go.
I'm just guessing, but maybe that's...
I'm going to go with Rudolph.
Or the type of music that he enjoys. Rap. Maybe? I don't know.
Or
no idea.
Randy.
20 minutes left. Okay, thank you, Liz.
Rasputin.
Rasputin. That's it. Uh-oh.
Rasputin Anthony Pruitt.
I go for
Rasputin Anthony Pruitt. That's got to be it.
That's
got to be it.
Definitely.
The second. Okay. Rick.
Yes, sir.
He's back.
Sorry about that, guys.
Hey, no problem.
Stuff here at the house.
Hey, things happen, right? You have more important things to do than this little gig. But let's see. Let's continue. Any particular one, Liz, while we have Rick with us?
I'd quite like to do 15 if we get a chance.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Okay,
yeah,
let's do it.
15's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is from Dispatch Greg. And he says, crew, always a good discussion. Magnetic versus true. Can be confusing. East is least, west is best. If it's spoken, it's magnetic. If it's written, it's true. Blah, blah, blah. But should it go away? Discuss. So he cited an article from Ops Group, Resisting the Pole. Should we still be using magnetic north? And this is, again, from the International Ops 2021 Ops Group. So, as Greg just said succinctly, discuss, crew.
Well, it's,
should I read this article first?
Yeah, I think let's do that.
Okay.
It's a long article, but...
is it?
Okay, I'll read a little bit of it. I won't read the whole thing. Let's just start with the opening of this, just kind of set up the context and premise. In recent years, NAV Canada has been... Oh, shoot, I don't want to read this. It has something to do with Canada.
This is an interesting beginning, actually. So just do the first.
In recent years, NAV Canada has been leading a charge to move the industry away from magnetic north to true north. And it makes sense. Well, it makes sense for Canada because they're so close to magnetic north.
But not for much longer.
Oh, okay.
That's true.
Modern
They're
technology
a bit late
has
to the game.
Okay. Modern technology has arguably rendered magnetic north obsolete. So why are we still using it? The simple answer is because we always have. Delve into ICAO Annex 4, and you'll see that bearings, tracks, and radials must still be published in degrees magnetic. But this begs the question, do we actually need it anymore? When humans first took to the skies, things were different. They needed a directional reference. Back in those days, it had to be something simple and light. Enter the magnetic compass. Nature was guiding the way because it had to. With modern navigation systems these days, all the magic happens reference to true north. Inertial and GPS systems both use simple conversions so that the information can be displayed to crew as a magnetic reference to match our charts and procedures. But because we are still using magnetic north as a reference, we are forced to deal with magnetic variation, the angular difference between the true and magnetic poles. It is an issue that costs the industry many millions of dollars a year to manage and can potentially lead to serious safety issues if things aren't handled properly on the ground and in the sky. And then it talks about the Earth's magnetic field and all that kind of stuff. Do I continue reading?
Well, I think the important bit is the fact that the magnetic pole is moving, and it's moving quite fast, and it's accelerating. So it used to be sort of on up there in northern Canada, and over the years it's progressing across the Arctic Ocean. It's now gone north of Greenland, and it's making its way to Russia. So all the time that this moves, it's becoming less of a problem for Canada and going to be more of a problem for Russia. So I can't see why Canada's getting upset. But I think we're talking the practical aspects here of people who navigate using a compass. The vast majority of GA pilots. Now, you're going to say GPS, but we all know that GPS requires a battery and occasionally gets turned off by the military, or at least confused by the military. And it can be expensive. If you want to just fly a simple GA aircraft, you're going to have a super cub and a compass, an airspeed indicator, ADS-B probably. And that's going to be it. You don't really necessarily want to be able to, or have to afford all the other gear that requires you to measure true heading and what happens when it fails. Everybody in every airliner in the world has a backup compass. It's magnetic. So what do we do then?
Exactly. And the thing with when you fly with a magnetic compass, I mean, you're subjected to all kinds of errors. And I remember the acronym from flight school, VD-MONA. I'll never forget that one.
Ooh.
Well,
so you
dodgy
have
one.
variation, deviation, magnetic dip, oscillation, and northerly turning errors, and acceleration, deceleration errors. And all these are things that you have to kind of keep in mind and deal with, and particularly deviation. You carry around what's called a deviation card, which will basically tell you the magnetic heading to fly to achieve a certain direction of flight, a cardinal direction of flight. So basically, the card does, deviation card does, basically tells you once you have all your equipment turned on in the aircraft, the interference that equipment might have on the whiskey compass. And so if you want to fly, say, a 090 or east heading, in order for you to actually fly that east magnetic heading, you might have to fly a 092 or a 094 heading on your compass to actually achieve a 090 heading. And so these are things that you kind of have to keep in mind. Although I have never actually flown a commercial airliner solely referencing the whiskey compass. I have, however, taken an airliner out of a heavy check, and one of the things that you do is you do what's called a compass swing, in which you go up in very controlled conditions, turn on equipment, and you have a mechanic with you, and you have you fly a north, south, east, west, and then north, northeast, southeast, and so on and so forth, and make sure that the card actually is still accurate. And if it's not, the mechanic makes the appropriate corrections and writes out a new card, and then that becomes part of the permanent kit of the jet. But that's really the end of that. Another interesting thing is that a lot of these modern jets automatically switch from magnetic reference to true reference. If I remember correctly, at 73 degrees north latitude and 60 degrees south latitude, as long as you have, and this is in Boeing airplanes, as long as you have the selector in auto, the heading reference selector in auto, it'll do it for you. And if you switch it to true, then all your navigation display will be a reference to true north. But I don't see why you would do that when you're not flying in the high and low latitudes. It's interesting though, flying reference to true north. It's that's the one right there.
Yeah. And then when you're even further north, are you going to grid, or does your true north is that the equivalent of grid?
Oh, and it goes, that's equivalent of grid.
Okay.
That's equivalent of grid, yes.
All right.
Exactly right.
So
exactly.
What we're talking about here is over the pole. If you're going to do polar flying, there is a predetermined grid laid out over the poles, because of course everything converges to meet over the actual pole, not the magnetic pole, and to give you something to fly, because after all, when you reach it, every heading is south.
Yeah.
To stop that confusion of what to do when you're over the pole, they lay out a rectangular grid spread over the top of the Earth, and you fly a grid heading to allow you to navigate and separate from other aircraft while you're
until
up
you
there.
get to a certain latitude, and then you kind of pick it up again.
Yeah, then you flick back to
as you
kinda
come up
normal.
over the
Yeah.
top there. But I tell you, I mean, flying, I've never gone over the actual geographic North Pole, but I've been very close to it. And the way the navigation display behaves at those latitudes is quite interesting. For a second there, your flight mode initiations are all over the place. It goes from lateral navigation to heading, and then it tells you check heading. It's just weird until you go over the top of it and you start heading back down south, and then it kind of goes here I am. And so
which way are you going? We're going south.
Yeah, exactly. So it's probably worth mentioning that inertial reference systems that every airliner has, just about, and GPS naturally work in true, and you just need a small computer to apply the appropriate magnetic variation for where you are to get your magnetic heading. It's not I think they're rather overstating it, where they say that they're forced to deal with magnetic variation, the angular difference between true and magnetic, an issue that costs the industry many millions of dollars a year to manage. I don't think so. I don't think it's cost that much. You just have to update the software.
Jeff, you've got to.
Sorry. Hang on, Hillel. It's not time yet.
Mike is getting a little trigger happy over there.
Few more minutes, Hillel.
Hello. Sorry.
I love it. Stop being by tracks.
We're almost at the end. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's a database. It's not moving so fast that it's unpredictable. So it's not like it's frantically complicated to apply. And after all, if you've got a piece of kit that can read a GPS signal, or you've got an inertial reference, you've got computers attached to them, this is not really a seriously difficult add-on to convert it back into magnetic. For me, the big trigger will be, and it's actually long overdue, is when the Earth flips magnetic poles. It should have happened already. It happens at relatively regular intervals.
Like a couple of millions of years. It's not really...
Yeah. Yep, but it has happened many times.
Oh, we've had this. It depends on which scientist you're reading about or talking to.
There is a chance, particularly since the movement of the magnetic pole has accelerated, that we're going towards a flip. If and when that occurs, that would be a damn good time to change away from magnetic into true navigation, because it would be very expensive to update everybody's compasses so they work the other way around.
I know.
Yeah, I think with all the modern navigational equipment we have now, I think it's just a matter of time that somebody's going to go, you know what? Why are we still doing the magnetic thing? Let's just
But that's a bit like when I did my air exams, I still had to learn how Amiga worked. I think there were probably 3 airplanes in the world, commercial airplanes, that still used Amiga.
Omega. Okay. We pronounce it Omega. Okay. Gotcha.
And
when you said Amiga, I think, is he talking about some kind of a game console? I don't know. Not sure what he's talking about.
And there was another one that used that similar long-range navigation system.
LORAN,
LORAN.
LORAN C.
LORAN. That's it. And we still learned how it worked and all the errors and everything, even though nobody used it. So the chances of us being able to move away from magnetic navigation, unless something drastic happens, I think are pretty remote.
And that's just the thing. Whenever the navigational database on aircraft is updated, a new variation database is also updated. And I remember not too long ago, actually, on one of our old Dash 200s, the 76200s that we had, I think 1 or 2 of them, the variation, I guess, information of what hadn't been updated with the rest of the FMC database, and so a circular came out saying that you weren't
don't use your compasses.
Yeah, well, you weren't allowed to fly area navigation approaches, or basically using the magenta line on lateral nav on LNAV alone. You had to actually use, if you're going to fly a non-position approach, it had to be a VOR or a localizer only approach using the course deviation indicator, like just an old school HSI, to make sure you were on the correct course and not trust the magenta line because the database, the variation database, hadn't been updated.
Even though the difference was probably a needle's width.
Mm-hmm.
Actually it was. And it's funny because I actually did fly and approach in one of those. I don't know where I forget where it was. And going from the ND navigation display mode to the HSI mode, I had the CDI centered using heading mode. But if I went back to the map mode, the magenta line was off to the left or the right. I forget what it was. I wasn't actually on course as it as it pertained to the navigation display, but I was right on course as it pertained to the HSI. So it was fun.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, just a reminder to all of you, I guess watching live, because by the time anybody actually sees this, it will be several days from now, or hears this. But tomorrow is the new database for, at least here in the U.S., for your FMS. So don't forget to change that. All right, that's your PSA for this week's episode. And now it is time for, oh no, it's an earthquake in Phoenix.
I didn't update my variation card here at home.
He didn't update his variation card.
That's what happens.
Anyway, so it's now time for us to wrap this thing up. I know everybody's breathing a sigh of relief. And what we do here is usually tell you about our great website, airlinepilotguide.com, where you can find information about the crew and the community calendar and the APG library and more detail about the plane tales, as well as the link or a way to get to YouTube, APG on YouTube. We have merchandise and so much more. Please go ahead and check that out over at airlinepilotguide.com. Oh, and information about the Coffee Fund, if you are so inclined. And we're also on social media, or since Steph's not here, I'm going to say the social meds. Perhaps Nick can tell you all about it.
Yeah,
I know.
We're on Facebook. And if you want to find us there, you have to look for Airline Pilot Guy on Facebook. Just pop that in the search bar. And we're in Twitter, the Twitter sphere at APG Crew. And that almost works for the Insta. In the Insta world, we're APG Crew. You just don't need.
Or I like to call it the Gram.
You now? That's very, very hip to call it the Gram.
Yes, it's so hip that it hasn't caught on yet.
Yeah, you're ahead of the trend.
All right. And let's see. Oh, you know what? Hang on. Let me see if, when I travel, sometimes it's hit and miss. But let me see if I can see if Hillel is here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Hey, Hillel! Hillel! Come over here. It's time for not for Hillel, for Slack. Well, both. I mean, pretty much Slack is Hillel on the APG.
Yep.
All right, come over here and don't get things wet here. Tell us about Slack, please.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and plane tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel. Now you can head on back and just let me know when you're going to be out of there, because I need to take a shower eventually. All right. There you go.
Jeff, you've got to try these towels.
Okay, just don't use them all, please. All right. Thank you, Hillel, for informing us all about the Slack group. And anything else before we sign off, crew?
No? I'll miss you next week, but I'll see you.
Yeah, we're going to miss you as
time.
well.
Yeah, just have a great time. Absolutely, Nixner.
Thanks.
But there is one last thing we always need to do, and that is to respect and to acknowledge the hard work that is put in each and every week by our producer director, Liz Piper, and she is in Toronto, Ontario, EO, Canada. So thank you very much, Liz, for
Hey, well done, Liz.
For
Thanks
being
very
there
much.
in the control room while we do this
Keeping
thing
it all
live and
together.
all the other stuff. Yeah. And until next time, wishing you all clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Talons, Douglas. Did we just crash? I didn't
I
hear
was waiting for Rick.
anybody else say
It's
goodbye.
order of seniority, Rick. Come on.
Well, was it me or did you just your connection just kind of skipped a little bit there?
No, I
Me?
just stopped moving.
Yeah.
I didn't have you guys up on screen, and I'm going, well, what? And then I heard Liz in my ear say, "Yay!" And
Should
I
we
go,
try
well,
that again?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
try that one again. Let's try that one again.
until next time, wishing you all clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Talons, Douglas.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
There we go.
Oh, man. There you go. Yeah, that works.
Excellent.
Oh, boy. This is
There
going to
it
be
is.
more fun editing.
Leave it in. It's even better.
Oh, I know. I'm doing that a lot more. People were talking about in the live audience, the YouTube chat. I don't know if the same thing is happening over on the Facebook side of things, but they're like little clicking noises. And I did notice that when I was watching one of our recent YouTube recordings. Hear a little. It's not really loud, but it's just like a little ticking noise, and I don't
was
hear
getting
it over here.
I'm getting it.
Oh, you are?
I think it might be a StreamYard thing.
It must be a StreamYard thing because I don't hear it at
Because-
all in anything that I'm listening to.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
Did
Liz says she
you,
doesn't hear it.
Get that
Speaking
at all,
of,
Rick?
let me. No, I didn't. Let me stop my recorder
Okay.
here.
Not
Oh
everyone
yeah,
did.
stop your recording. Okay.
Yeah, not everyone
I-
did, but certainly a number of people were mentioning it.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with the video streaming for some reason. Okay, let me hit. Stop.
It was happening during the plain tale, so
Oh, it was?
It's
Oh.
not. Yeah, it's not one of us individually. It's the
No.
general broadcast. I think.
Yeah, it's the stream. Okay. Yeah, well, the good news is that I don't hear any of it here, and that's what's being recorded, so that's the good news. But,
Anyone
yeah, if
got
you're watching the video,
any title suggestions, please, from the chat room? Got to be something magnetic in there.
Oh,
Will Jeff be doing the art?
no, Jeff won't be doing the art.
Well, I can try and do the art tomorrow. You see, if we can come up with a good idea,
Yeah.
I can whack that.
Oh,
off.
good. Let's do it. Let's get so
I
he
can
can knock
whack
it out
it
because
off.
I don't want to do
Okay,
the.
I have a couple.
Okay.
I love that line of Rick's. How do you identify a pilot? By a beer can on a fishing line.
How you pick up a pilot?
You pick up
Yeah.
a pilot, yeah.
That's how you pick
You identify a pilot because he tells you.
No, you identify because you'll grab it. That's how you.
Yeah.
Nick made a comment about blood spattered fuselage. I don't know if you can do anything
Oh,
with that.
yeah.
But-
Interesting. On that little
Very
helicopter.
Quentin Tarantino.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did
Quite.
you do
Totally
anything
not
with
ideal.
It's a Small World? You were doing your Small World stories, so It's a Small World. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
And could
that's
you
an
do
idea.
anything with voice controlled cockpit? I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's another idea.
That's all
Voice
I've got.
controlled cockpits. Alexis,
Alexis.
or no, what is it?
Alexa.
Alexa. There we go. Alexa,
Or Siri.
land the airplane.
North Pole flip. Okay.
North Pole flip. Okay. On a whim and a prayer.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, but he spells it W-I-M, no H in there for some
I
reason.
think it's a short
So-
form for Wilhelm or William,
Wil-
William.
Wilhelm?
Yeah,
or
that
William?
would make
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. I've never heard that at all.
Come
ever
on,
in
we've
my
got to
life.
have a better North Pole one.
Wim Wenders,
Magnetic.
isn't there a famous guy, Wim Wenders? Anyway.
What a magnetic personality.
Identify
Magnetic
them by big
mutinies.
Wow.
Well, I don't read the USA Today, so yeah.
Yeah, and you know why? Because we don't get them free anymore. They don't have them anymore.
Exactly.
I actually quite
Mostly you're
like
cheap, too.
beer on a fishing line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beer and
That's why I
fishing
said
line,
free.
There you go. I was like, ooh, beer.
Yeah. I could easily do beer and a fishing line.
There you go.
Let's go with that one. If he can do
That was-
that, let's go with it. I love that.
And you know where I got that, right? That was from anybody ever seen that movie Boondock Saints?
No.
No.
It's a really good movie about how you find an Irishman in Boston. You you hook a potato to an end of the fishing line. You drag it through Boston. The Irish.
Oh wow!
I know, it's pretty.
We're into the stereotypes.
That's
here.
rude.
I know. That's why I thought of that. Oh, man.
Oh boy, HR, if you're listening,
Yeah.
you need to counsel Rick for that one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you know what? Your camera, Rick, is getting so confused by that window, the bright light coming through the window behind you.
Oh,
So
that's
it
been
depends
going on the whole show, Jeff.
I know.
He's
Sometimes I
been,
look up and it's a silhouette.
fading in and out. It's quite mesmerizing, actually.
I just hope Rick's pest control didn't kill all the rickets.
Yeah, really.
Oh, I hope not.
There was that, and then so we had that, and then I think the pest control person and then the pool person, they must have been coordinating schedules because they both showed up at the same time.
They were out there fighting around the pool.
That was stopping pests around the pool. Yeah, that's right.
Thanks, everybody.
Brilliant.
Is that good enough for you to work with?
Oh, I'm going to go with a fishing line and a pilot. I just need a pilot walking around going.
Yeah, I think we should find a photo of Rick and stick that one in there.
Yeah, Rick, can you do me can you get me a uniform and do a self-portrait of you walking along like a robot with your arm out?
All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. I hope that my internet connection hung in there.
It was okay.
Yeah.
It
okay.
did. It did. And Lucy's doing great, Micah. Lucy's doing awesome. She's a great little dog.
We need pictures.
Excellent.
Oh yeah, I'll send pictures.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
All right. Well, probably should end the broadcast for this week.
Got work to do.
Rick's got work to do. Yeah. Quit slacking off, man. Get out there and start working.
Nick's got bed to go to.
Oh, I've also got work to do.
All right. So let's end this thing so we can get on and
Bye, everybody.
take care, everybody.
Bye, Masha.
Bye, everyone.